The greatest sin a human can commit is to defecate in fresh water. I said, oh. I was like, oh my God. We are all doomed. We are all doomed, right?
So I'd like to welcome to Curious Bee, Cassandra Faye Floyd, all the way from California. Now, I have been rabbiting on about quite literally wading my way through an incredible book called The Great Cosmic Mother, Rediscovering the Religion of the Earth. Now,
Yes.
I am not a great reader. I really struggle. My mind, terrible. So it is thanks to Cassandra that who's been in my ears because she's read this book. It was 35 hours of listening to you. So I feel like I know you so well.
Oh,
And honestly, I was doing making dinner, doing my yoga, driving, like you
yes.
just digest this book,
Yes.
and taking notes. And there is no way that I would have read this book. There's no way if it wasn't for you. So I have so much gratitude, lady,
I
that
appreciate it.
you gifted that's a chunk of your time being, having I just asked how many beautiful grandchildren, 2 biological and 9 that you've inherited.
Well, I'm sure
So
you saw a couple of my grandchildren like jumping on my lap during the reading. So yes, it was a whole thing.
but yeah, so thank you so much. So I just really wanted to connect with you to out of just full gratitude. And you have done a lot. Like you have, my God, I think the book's behind you fully articulate the journey that you have taken in this lifetime. Like there's actually, I'm 47 and you're coming up to 50, so we're close.
Hmm.
But what you have done, like I was a graphic designer and you have been, and I'm going to let you fill my beautiful listeners in on your journey of where, how this book crossed your path
Hmm.
and your background. And so I'm going to hand the mic over to you
Okay.
to just give a bit of like, who are you, what path have you walked, and then my first question, you could go into that, is like, how did this book come into your life? Because that's a really interesting little story too,
Okay.
and I know there was a bit of resistance around like, really, like
Yeah.
really.
Yes.
But yeah.
No. So thank you so much, Belinda, for inviting me to be on your show and to connect with your audience. And I'm really, really grateful and honored because, first of all, I told you when we were connecting that Fiji is probably number one on my list of places. I mean, not Fiji, excuse me, New Zealand.
Yeah.
I have
Like,
Fiji on my mind because me and my homegirls are talking about trying to go to Fiji for our birthday. But anyway, New Zealand, since I was a little
oh,
girl, has been like number one on my list of places to go before I die. And so when I got the email, I was like, "Oh my God, I love Fiji!" Why do I? Because Fiji is next week. I'm trying to go. I'm trying to make a miracle happen. New Zealand, since I was a little kid, and
oh.
so I'm really grateful that you reached out and gave me the opportunity to connect with you in that side of the world. It's really, to me, I'm grateful because every time something like this happens, every time someone reaches out to me from some unexpected place in the world, I know right away that it is the net that was cast by the mother in her calling on me to read this book. Because I'll be honest, my motivation for reading the book was nothing other than, damn, this would be really nice to have this book on audiobook, and nobody has done the audiobook for this book. And so I guess I have to do it myself. Right. And at the time that I read this book, on my YouTube channel, I had already read the entire book live on my Facebook channel. And because of the way the book is written, and because, and I read the book exactly how it's written, a lot of people who followed me when I was reading, and this was in 2019 when I read the book on my YouTube channel. I mean, on my Facebook channel. And so when I read the book on my Facebook channel, people were like, we don't know where to catch up. Like, none of the, because the chapters aren't numbered, right? They're just
Yeah.
named. And so, and then Facebook like blocked, they like deleted a lot of my readings from Facebook. So I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to trip about it. I'm just going to go and read it over again. So when I read the book, I think it was in 2020 that
That's
I read
right.
the book
Four
on my
years ago.
YouTube. Yeah, on
Yeah.
my YouTube channel. That was the fourth time that I'd read the book straight through, and the second time that I had read the book live. And again, the only reason that I read the book on my YouTube channel, because when I read the book on my YouTube channel, I think I had 5 followers. I think I had 5
Oh.
because I had only been using YouTube as an external hard drive to like dump videos off my phone from like vacation. So if you go all the way back to my YouTube channel, you'll see me in like Yellowstone, and you'll see me at all these national parks. And I'm like, oh my God, I have too much stuff on my phone. So let me just use my YouTube channel to dump all of these videos so I don't lose them. It was the only reason I used YouTube. And I was like, nobody's going to be on here except maybe the couple of people who followed when I read it on Facebook. And then all of a sudden, literally extremely quick, people were coming and bombarding my YouTube channel because of this book. And the book is so extraordinary and so profound. And I knew right away this was the mother attempting to cast a wide net. She's like, look, it is time. I have something to say, and it needs to be said. And if you don't say it, no one else will. Subsequent to that, there have been several people who have begun the process of reading the book the same way, doing like reading the book on their YouTube channel. When I read the book, right after I finished the book, I initiated a book club for the book, and it took us 6 months. It took us 6 months to plow through this book. every week every week we were on a call, on a Zoom conference. There were people who came every single time, and then there were people who we would have anywhere from 5 people to 35 people on this, on this political education for the great cosmic mother. And one of the first guys, and he'd been there the most consistent, he's an artist from Poland. And he inboxed me and he was like, oh my God, I've had this book for so many years, and every time I looked at it, I was like, I'm gonna eventually read this book. I'm gonna eventually read this book. But it's intimidating. The book is big. We have
Yeah. Do you
lives.
want
The
to hold
world
it
is
up?
crazy.
Do you
Yeah.
want to hold it up? You got to, because it's a monster, and you've got to see all the
It's
tags.
like five
It's
five
like
hundred and
it's so,
oh, hold on. It's like it's 496 pages, 52 chapters. It's a hell of a book. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And
Look and
so
look,
when
look at it's
you can
such a
see how
treasure with look at all
well
the
marked
notes.
up mine is. And so
Yeah, I
he
love
reached
it.
out and he was
Beautiful.
like, I'm going to tell you, as many years as I've had this book on my shelf, and every now and again, I'll get this little nudge. You need to open the book. You need to read the book. And I'll be like, oh, it's so big, though. I'm not going to do it. And he said, I started listening to you read the book on YouTube. And he said, I was so inspired and I wanted to check in with you. How would you feel about me reading the book in Polish to my people so my people can have access to it? I was like, first of all, I didn't write the book. So the fact that you are checking in with me to read the book is great. It's cute, right? I was like, but hell yes. Absolutely yes. Read the book in Polish. Another woman from Brazil reached out to me and said, "Oh my God, this is amazing. I'm gonna read this book in Brazilian Portuguese." I was like, "Yes, do that." You know what I mean? And so even things like that to me were just when I read this book, I say all the time that this book to me is the evidence of channeling. It is the evidence of the mother making her will known, even if you are not conscious that you are being used as an instrument for her will. That's real.
Yeah,
Yes.
I feel yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how I got to it. Well, that's the why. That's not how I got to it, but that's the why. Do you want me to go on?
I'd love to hear your your backstory, like,
Okay.
the path you've walked in your
Okay.
life, because you've walked a really interesting and diverse path,
Mm-hmm.
and this book, as you say, was written by a white woman, and and you look at us, we are two completely different ethnicities, and that's what I love about what's happening and what this book is
Yes.
about. It's breaking, it's shattering all
Yes.
that, and
Yes.
we like me and you, we're born from the same cell, we're the same. And that's
Yes.
what's so beautiful, is that this is bringing us back to one, to that
Yes.
oneness. And that's like, so I'd love you to share like your, and you've got a tattoo, because you shared in the story that you were a hard out, you've walked you've had a really different, you've had a really interesting path that's
Yes.
been, quite rebellious, and your other, the rogue black
Yes.
girl is another name you go by, like,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
really interesting path. So I'd love you to share that, because it gives your backstory of, like, you're a really interesting lady,
Thank you. Well, I
mm,
think thank you for that, by the way. I think it's really important because it's only been as a consequence of the life that I've lived that I'm able to teach the way that I teach. I teach in a way that really I believe compels, at least that's my objective, is to compel people to really do a deep dive into their actual life, their past, those things that we choose to try to forget or evade, because in the world the way that it is, where patriarchy rules supreme, we endure so much trauma. Every single person on earth endures so much trauma in this world the way that it is, that what happens is we um we are always attempting to just persevere through the tough times, just like persevere through the trauma and on to the next thing. And so it doesn't give us the time of stillness and rest and integration, and give us the opportunity of a liberated mind so that we can figure out how to not only quote move from trauma to trauma to trauma, but how to end suffering for once and for all. You feel me? And that has to be the objective, is to end human suffering once and for all, to end planetary suffering once and for all. And so I am convinced more and more every day that the peculiarity of my life is is what had to happen, not just the peculiarity of my life. I want to be clear, okay? Because in a lot of these spiritual spaces, when we learn about like what do you call it, like reincarnation, and when we learn about karma, and when we learn about dharma and all of these concepts, they are so disassociated from the reality that is the life that we live right now. And so everything becomes a justification, even if that's not the intention initially. Everything becomes hijacked by patriarchy, becomes a justification for human suffering. Well, it is their karma. They did choose this life. I mean, they're suffering because they chose this, because obviously there's something they're supposed to learn from suffering. There's every single thing, even as it started out a pure personification of a process that was given to us by the mother. In the hands of the son gone rogue, it becomes a monstrous weapon that justifies our existence of suffering. And so we have to be really, really careful and clear about how we use these words, dharma and karma, and and reincarnation, and all of this BS, all of it. Now, this is my personal position. All of it is BS while patriarchy remains. All of it is a weapon while patriarchy remains. Do you understand? Patriarchy has invaded every spiritual space that exists on earth. There is not one that has been exempt from patriarchy invading the space and corrupting it in a way to meet its own goals. The reason I have to say this is because I was born super, super condensed version of my life. I was born into a religious cult. which is timely because everybody's talking about the end of the world right now. Everybody's talking about
Mhm.
Jesus coming back right now.
Mhm.
Everybody's talking about the rapture right now. Everybody's talking about prophecies and wars and rumors of wars. I was born in September. It'll be 50 years ago into a religious cult. Not just an end of the world religious cult, but one of the foundational cults of what they call the second age of revival. And so the guy who was the founder of this cult, his name is David Terrell. Lo and behold, I'm 50 and he is still alive. And he had gray hair when I was a little girl. This man is still alive, still preaching in Texas. You feel me? And so this guy, he was really cutting edge for the time. He started his church in the 1960s, and he was cutting edge because he started his church in Alabama. He was the first preacher, the first white preacher to integrate his church in the entire South. He gained and he galvanized a lot of notoriety because this position that he took about integrating the church. I'm gonna have to take a note while I'm while I'm talking to you. This
I'm used to
this
this. Like, used to you doing that.
um
Ah,
this thing
I love it. You're so cool.
this this thing that he did, which was really radical at the time. This was revolutionary at the time for a white preacher to integrate his church in Alabama, one of the more hostile states during the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement. So when this white man with this calling that he received, where supposedly God had come to him in a vision and told him, excuse me, where God had, I told her to text me later. Anyway, where God had told him that in a dream, in a vision, that Jesus was going to soon return for his church, and the only people who would go up the only people who would go up in the rapture would be those who heeded the call and moved to Edwin, Alabama. That's where I grew up. I was born in Dothan but raised in Edwin. And so what he did was he bought hundreds of acres of land in the across the street from this church, and on the land he bought a bunch of used trailers and popped the trailers up all over the land, hundreds of them. And everybody who quote heeded the call left their lives, left their homes, left their spouses if their spouses wouldn't come, took their children, all the things, and moved to Edwin, Alabama, because David Terrell said Jesus is coming back in a little bit, and you have to make sure you are in Edwin, because the only people on the whole of the globe that are going to go up into the sky, child, are going to be in Edwin, Alabama. And so I was born in this religious cult. The way I was born into this religious cult is crazy because, and I only learned one half of the story up until 7 years ago. This is why I moved to California. I always grew up knowing my mother's story, that my grandmother had left my grandfather in the house that he had built for her, took her 8 kids on a bus to nowhere, Alabama. The population of Edwin, Alabama to this day is 300 people. There's not a single stoplight in the city. It's that small, right? Like if you blink, you'll miss it. And she took her babies on this bus to go to someplace they had never been and didn't know anybody, to Edwin, Alabama, to be in this church. David Terrell, anybody who heeded the call, he would put them in a trailer of their own with their families. So my mother and my father were both 15 years old when they met. I'd never known my father's side of the story in terms of how they ended up there. I just knew that my parents met because they were both their families both moved as a part of this cult, right? And so my mother and her siblings, my mother was the older middle child, and so she ended up getting a job at 16 or at 15. My parents got married at 16. They had me at 17. Okay? And so I was born in this cult. All of my foundational memories was in this church that still stands in Edwin, Alabama, right? And then my sister was born 18 months later. I was abused. I was physically abused by a babysitter who was a part of the church. She was a young girl. She was maybe 18 when she used to keep us. And she was extremely violent with me. I have crystal clear memories. My earliest memories were of this woman, this girl child, abusing me. I think I might have been maybe 18 months. I was just walking. My sister was still an infant. And so my sister didn't suffer the abuse that I suffered, right?
Oh,
So, but the abuse was always, you know how abusers will abuse in a way that they are not found out, right? So the abuse was always in ways that my mother was not aware, and she would threaten my life if I said anything. Well,
mhm,
I ended up hospitalized one day, and that is how my mother found out that I had been being abused by this girl. And this is when my parents left. This went on for a long time though, because
mhm,
I think I was 4 years old when we finally left the church. So this was a few years that I was enduring this abuse by this girl. This is how we left the church. And it was so traumatizing for my mother that she never went to church again. My father never went to church again, though my father was still a zealot. My father was still a zealot. So when I say a zealot, I mean old school, Old Testament, wearing sackcloth and ashes, fasting every month, hardcore zealot. He just never went to church again. My mother abandoned religion altogether, though I'm certain she still believed in God, but she was still conflicted a lot by what happened to me in this church.
mhm.
As a matter of fact, my mother never talked about David Terrell or that church again until 4 years ago, when I never heard her say his name until his stepdaughter, his oldest stepdaughter, wrote a tell-all book called Holy Ghost Girl about her time in David Terrell's church as his stepdaughter. And my mom told me about it. It was the first time in my whole life I heard my mom talk about that
Wow,
church. So
that's so
anyway,
recent.
say that again.
That's so recent for you. That's really recent. All that lifetime. Wow.
Not just that, it's interesting like how individualized our lives are. My sister and I have always been so extremely close, but my sister and my daughter are exactly the same way. They don't recall anything about their childhood, like no details, like nothing. I'm like, how do you not remember this? She's like, I just don't. She was only 18 months
Mm,
younger than me, my sister. She has no, but my memory is extraordinarily, my youngest memory of childhood, I couldn't have been a year old, and can see it crystal clear in my mind like it happened yesterday. And
that's
I can remember
unusual.
every scar. I was 3 years old when I got the scar on my hand. I remember exactly how I got it, like crystal clear memories of my childhood. And thinking about it now as an adult, again, I'm not rambling, I'm taking you on a walk. When we face our past, when we face our childhood, and we face it in a way that we're not triggered by the emotional trauma of it, but we are looking at it, recognizing that we are safe in this moment, that our childhood cannot traumatize us anymore, but there is something from our childhood that we must extract that will inform our present. And we hear certain therapists talk about
Mm,
this in different ways. We talk about, like, reparenting your inner child if your parents were emotionally unavailable. We hear about like childhood regression therapy, right? We hear about all of these ways that people are attempting to understand how to how to bridge this gap that makes them a whole human in their present by filling in some gap that exists from their childhood, right? Well, I've never done any of those things, childhood regression work or anything like that. But as a spiritual woman, and one who has been crystal clear that there has always been something peculiar about me, I've been crystal clear about that without the language to articulate that. Even as a Christian, even as a teenage Christian going to church, I always understood that there was something peculiar about me and my experience, something peculiar that was different than the other people that I was in space with at the time. Even as a kid growing up in a fundamentalist church, an independent fundamentalist Baptist church at that,
mm,
as fundamentalist as a church can be, that was the church I grew up in. And even in the church where girls couldn't wear pants, like old school religion, there were no drums in the church because drums was of the devil, like all of that shit. Yes. um and And girls couldn't, there were no female ministers. There was no such thing. There were no female preachers, no female ministers. People in the church used to say, this girl is going to be a witness. This girl is going to be a preacher at 10, 11, 12 years old. Old white people in the church. This girl is going to be a preacher. Like that. Do you hear how this child is talking? This conflicted by saying it, because in their church there are no female preachers or ministers. Like, what are we witnessing? What are we witnessing? This girl. Like, this girl. Now, the reason these, going back, I'm gonna tell you a story. After I left the church and became a revolutionary, an activist, a Black nationalist, right, at 24, and recognizing that what I was doing at the time was important, but there was a gaping wound. Something was hugely vacant, missing in revolutionary work. Okay, so just to try to wrap that up, these different life experiences that I have had, which have been many and have been, in what my estimation is, kind of extremely peculiar for a young Black child growing up in Abbeville, Alabama, right? And it wasn't until I became interested in spirituality. And the way that I became interested in spirituality was unexpected. I became interested in spirituality in medical school. I was an atheist when I started medical school. I was not just an atheist, I was what we call a dialectical materialist. I was a Marxist. I was a socialist. I was a revolutionary. And so they're always atheists, I guess, you know? And so the reason I went to medical school was I was certain that this was going to be the method with which I was going to contribute to the changing of the world, was going to be through alternative medicine. And it was one of my mentors, one of my professors who since transitioned. Her name was Light Miller. She was an Indian woman from India. She was from a 15-generation line of Ayurvedic practitioners. The line of practitioners who were said to be responsible for preserving the medicine during the second British invasion, where the British were attempting to stamp out the practice of Ayurveda through brute force. They were murdering doctors. They were burning the books in piles. They were trying to completely eradicate Ayurveda as a system of medicine. And there were a bunch of practitioners, 15, it was 8 families who were said to have been the primary, like, guardians of the medicine that kept it from completely being eradicated. My teacher, my mentor, was from one of those families. And it was in Ayurveda that I started really reconsidering my whole position on this whole spirituality thing. Like, as a matter of fact, totally not intending to talk about her at all on this live. Let me tell you what I found today. Literally today, I got goosebumps everywhere. My notes from her class, my first day of notes from her class, and her class was in 2007. I just found this notebook today. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I found this. My notes, not even intending to mention this woman in this live at all. And here we go. I found her notes today from 2007. I was like, oh, I got to leave this book out. I got to go back through this book. Yeah. So she was wonderful. And it was this thing that I'm always talking about. It was kind of like this introduction of the bridging of the gap between science and spirit, between, science and spirituality. And that class was the class that had me really at least beginning the process of reconsidering my position about spirituality and the existence of something greater. And then when I was in my graduate program, I met my ex-husband, who was, I was still struggling. I was still, an atheist-ish, you feel me? And and he had been incarcerated in his young life, and he was a practitioner of Ifa. So he's talking to me about, like, sneaking food out of commissary for the ancestors, because he had an ancestor altar. And I'm like, what? An ancestor altar? You talk to your ancestors? but ain't they dead? Like completely oblivious, because I came up in a Christian background. So I'd not heard of anything like that. Even though I was in a quote black African organization, they were completely opposed to anything that had to do with African spirituality. Period. It is about this revolutionary science and nothing else, right? And so it's not until I'm talking to my husband and he's talking about sneaking food from the commissary to feed his ancestors, and I was like, weirdo. Like our recording was unusual, but he was the one that started planting the seed of something very specific in terms of spirituality that was centered in an African consciousness, right? I'm saying this because, baby, unless you go back and revisit your life and what at the time may not have seemed important, but now you have grown and you can go back, and those moments that you didn't have a language for now make perfect sense. Now you have a language that can explain your past that has an automatic impact on your present. To take those things, let me tell you something. To take the dreams that I had as a child, clear dreams, reoccurrent dreams that made no sense as a child, 10, 11, 16. So impactful, these dreams, that my stepfather asked me 3 years ago, girl, do you still be having dreams about tornadoes? They were so prevalent that I would wake up sobbing about tornadoes consistently for years. But I didn't have any language because, first of all, patriarchal religion takes that language from you. That's what it does. It tells you that everything that would give your life insight, that would give you the ability to be the governess of your life and the fulfillment of your destiny, is taken from you and diabolicized. Everything that would give you the ability to navigate your life with ease is reduced to something sinister or evil. So as a young girl, where young girls in particular, young people in general, but young girls, pubescent girls, oh my God. Oh my God. Hold on. Oh my God. Shh. Child, listen. Especially pubescent girls, there is a surge of power occurring in their bodies that have the ability to really help them level up in their spiritual life, level up in their power, level up in what they're able to do for the group. This period of time where young girls transition from their little selves to being introduced to the magic of the blood that is about to start pouring from their bodies, and everything in society is attempting to suppress this power, attempting to emerge out of these babies' bodies at the age of 10, 11, 12 years old. The reason I just had that moment, child, and this might be controversial, so you might want to make a disclaimer that, you know, all of the opinions of the guest are her own or whatever. But I have been watching these different documentaries that are very sinister, if you have me tell it, but they're impactful, they're interesting, and everybody is so fearful about the topic that everybody treads lightly. And it's about the issue of trans politics in general and trans medicine in particular, especially where it impacts the lives of prepubescent young people, right, who believe that they may be trans and want to start taking puberty blockers to assist in their transition. This one particular documentary that I saw talked about how, especially in Europe, in the UK, the great majority by far of young people being told by psychologists that they are trans and need to start taking puberty blockers right away are born female. The great majority. I think one study I read said 83% of children who are transitioning in the UK are born female, transitioning to male, to boy, to man, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the females that are detransitioning, so they start taking puberty blockers in their preteens, And then by the time they're 21, 24 years old, they're trying to detransition because they came to realize, at least for themselves, that these doctors told me I was trans, but actually I was just gay. That as soon as a girl child starts to express same sex attraction, that it has become a tendency for primarily male doctors to tell these girls, especially if they are masculine in their presentation, right? So if they're tomboys,
Mm.
right, and they're same sex attracted, then these doctors who make a lot of money start the process of telling these girls that they are trans and start them on puberty blockers. I never thought about this until this moment. And I say that people have a right to sovereignty. What I do know, though, is that patriarchy is real. Patriarchy invades and infects every single space. And I'm telling you that three of the most powerful moments in a person born female's life is the moment that they experience menarche, the moment that they give birth to their first child, and the moment that their ovaries go to sleep and they enter into their crone years. These are the most energetically, hormonally, and spiritually impactful and powerful moments in a female's life. And this moment where she is bourgeoning, where she is 10. I was 9 years old when I started my menstrual cycle. So anywhere from 10 to 13 years old, this surge of energy, this surge of power that is taken over this girl's body. First of all, nobody is having a conversation with her about human sexuality. Nobody is having a conversation with her about human sexuality, about blood and the presence of blood being powerful, and your own personal initiation into what will eventually become womanhood. No, you are not a woman when you start to bleed, but what will eventually become womanhood. This is the initiation that every female must go through in order to adhere to these cycles of life. That does not mean that if you choose not to have children, that somehow you are less woman or you are less female. It means that if you make the decision as the governess of your body, as the governess of your universe, to partake in a process of giving life on earth, that you are empowered and emboldened in a way that you can do it and set the terms for your sovereignty and the sovereignty of your child, right? And so I'm sitting here talking to you about this and how this is one of the most powerful moments in your life. And I'm like, oh my God, that thing that I just saw, this
Yeah.
documentary about all of these girls being given hormone blockers, given puberty blockers at 10, 11, 12 years old, being told to start surgically having transition surgery at 15, 16, 17 years old. And then at 24, 25 years, I've treated people that way, by the way. I've treated 5 trans men in my practice. Never had a trans woman petition me for treatment, which I find interesting. But of these trans men, meaning people born female actively transitioning to men, all of them were under the age of 30. Of the 5, 3 of them were Asian. Of the 3 that were Asian, all of them had been adopted by white lesbian couples. All 3 had been adopted by white lesbian couples from either Vietnam or China. I was like, oh my God, this is a sociology project that could be conducted. What are the similarities what are the odds, first of all, that I don't market, I don't promote, my whole business is word of mouth. So what are the odds that 5 trans people, all of the trans people being trans men, and nobody ever talks about trans men, ever. When's the last time you heard a big, great debate about what is a man? What is the definition of a man? You hear that shit about women all the time, though. What's a woman? What's a real woman? What's the definition of woman? What does it mean? Can men have children? But you never ever hear. When's the last time you heard a great debate on the legislative floor about what's a man? What's the definition of a man? Can a woman be a man? Can a female be a man? Can a man have a baby? None of this, right? And I'm gonna tell you, that's a discussion for another day. The reason
Oh,
I
yeah.
got off on that is because that just now it made sense why there has to be this attack on the bourgeoning or minarch, you know,
Mm-hmm.
minarch. And menarche is the onset of the menstrual cycle. For those that don't know the
Yeah.
technical word, menarche is the first menstrual cycle. The reason I can say that is because I spent about 2 weeks on a Native American reservation in Arizona. I met this woman online, and she was like, "You should come to the res." I was like, "Okay." And she said, "There's something I want to show you." And she took me to a ceremony. And the Apache, the White Mountains Apache, are still very, very hardcore Catholics, but there are still several attributes of their traditional ceremony that were not impacted by the imposition of Catholicism. So she took me to the ceremony called the Sunrise Ceremony, which is goddamn powerful. For the last 20 years, I've been in so many spiritual spaces, so many ceremonial spaces, and to this day, I've never seen anything as powerful as the ceremony on this reservation. To this day. And I've done some radical shit. I've seen some unbelievable shit. To this day, I've never seen anything as radical as this. On this reservation, there are about 50,000 Native people on this reservation. And every girl on the reservation, as at the moment that she bleeds for the first time, she has to alert her parents. My period started today. Her parents goes right to work, because before the next 28 to 32 days, which is the next time she will bleed, but in that period, from her first period to her second period, they have to organize her sunrise ceremony. Every girl receives a sunrise ceremony. In that sunrise ceremony, it is 4 days. This girl is awakened at sunrise. All of the men in her family are going to be drumming. All the women in her family are going to be singing. She is going to be here in the center. She's going to be flanked on two sides by two girls who have just gone through their sunrise ceremony. Behind her are the males playing the drums, the females singing. In front of her are two lines. On the right side line are going to be females and two spirit people, people who are like LGBTQIA. Females and two spirit people on one side, males on the other side. At sunrise, this girl is going to start dancing, and she's going to dance all day, all day. And at the top of every hour, they give her a 15-minute break to get some water, to get some food, and she starts dancing again. She starts dancing again. She starts dancing again. The two girls beside her dancing, dancing all day long, from sunrise to sunset. The purpose of the dance is for the girl to descend into what we call ceremony. The whole purpose is based on their origin story. And this origin story is shared by many, many tribes in the United States. But this particular ceremony, the ceremony or the admonition of the goddess is different. Most of these tribes believe that their origin story started with a goddess deity named White Buffalo Calf Woman, and she was the creator deity of human beings. The story goes that it's very extraterrestrial. Every hair on my body is standing on end right now. The
Mm-hmm.
story is very extraterrestrial, and the story is also very similar among a lot of cultures. But they tell the story about how this goddess came to this planet on an abalone shell. Sound familiar? You think about the Aphrodite, and she's on a shell in the ocean. She emerges off the foam. Blah, blah, blah. It's similar in a lot of ways. But anyway, she comes to Earth on an abalone shell, and she turns in on herself and starts to give birth to other females. Sound familiar? Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And then she says, after some time, she's like, my babies need a partner. So she puts herself to sleep and allows herself to become impregnated by the sun, by the sun. This is what allows her to give birth to the first males. White Buffalo Calf Woman is also the healer deity of the people, right? And so she is the most powerful healer. Sound familiar? This is Venus. This is Aphrodite. This is Inanna. This is Ashtoreth. This is Oshun. The supreme healing deity is also the deity of love and the deity of maternity across cultures, right? So she puts herself to sleep, lets herself get pregnant. White buffalo calf woman, as the healer of the people, they say that when a girl child experiences her first menstrual cycle, this is the only time in her life where she will be powerful enough and open enough to become possessed by white buffalo calf woman. And once she is possessed by the spirit of white buffalo calf woman, she has the ability to heal every ailment in the community. You understand? So in order for her to become possessed by white buffalo calf woman, she has to dance herself to the brink of exhaustion so that she can be taken over by the deity. And so at sunrise for 4 days in a row, she is dancing, dancing, dancing. They give her some nutrients, they give her some water, they give her a little break, they rub her down, and then she goes to dancing again until sunsets, 4 days in a row. And those two lines of people standing in front of her, the females and the LGBTQIA people, two spirit people, and then all of the males. Now, I'm not, I'm not a part of their tribe. So when the girl invited me, I am afar. I'm watching from afar. This ceremony happened, right? She's like, there's certain things you can participate in. There's certain things you can't participate in. There's certain things you can take pictures of. There's certain things you can't take pictures of. So just to be respectful, I tried to keep, far enough away that I could get good shots and then, see what was happening. So this girl is dancing. She's dancing. She's dancing. She's dancing. And then one by one, first somebody from the right side line, then the next person will be a left side line, staggering. And these people will come in front of her and you can see them talking to her saying, I hurt my shoulder here, my hip hurt, or my back hurt. And while she's dancing, the baby will touch their body and spend a little extra time on the space that they pointed to. And she will rub them from head to feet while she's dancing to heal them and send them on their way all day for 4 days in a row. It was the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen. First of all, because imagine how empowering it is to be a girl child in a world that is horribly patriarchal and antagonistic to girls. And there had to be 500 people out there every day. It was like a whole ass party. There were food vendors. There was bonfires the size of buildings. People on lawn chairs cooking out. It was like a whole thing. There had to be 500 people out there every day. People were the family, the immediate family of the girl. They had a whole little setup where they had tents. So they didn't go home every day for the 4 days to make sure that she's jolly on the spot to do the dancing in the morning at sunrise. They had a whole clan tribe of tents set up on the perimeter. So every day she's up, jolly on the spot, whatever. They're and of course I'm getting all the attention because people are like, there's a black girl on the damn reservation. Who does black girl belong to?
Oh my goodness.
So the first night I met the girl's parents, they were like, oh my God, you should come camp with your camping. Because I was camping across the country. And so the person that invited me on the reservation, I was pitching my tent in their backyard. And they were like, no, you should pitch your tent with us. We have plenty of space. You should pitch your tent with us. I was like, well, that I'm really, really honored. But, I'm going to come every day. I'm going to be here every day. But, I'm here with this family, whatever. Yeah. It was really extraordinary.
You must have felt like you were in you'd gone across a timeline, how is this happening? Right?
It was everything about being on that reservation, but that was only one of 7 reservations that I ended up camping on when I was driving across the country. It was really extraordinary. This drive across the country, it's probably going to have to be a book because the way that when I made the decision, because everybody was scared. My mom was like, girl, what do you mean you about to drive across the country by yourself and you going to camp in every state? I was like, Mama, I'm 45 years old. I'm a grown up. I think I got it. Right.
But that's so recent.
Yeah. It was in 2018 that I did this 6-week drive across the country. And the reason I did it was, you're my age and I had been going through kind of empty nest syndrome. All the kids were gone out in the world doing their thing. I was like, well, what the fuck I'm going to do now? I love it. Nobody don't need me no more. You feel me? I'm in here by myself. I'm not having a conversation with another human for days at a time if I don't call anybody. That empty nest syndrome shit is real. It is
Well,
deep and it'll have you.
I'm just entering it now. My son's 18. He's just gone overseas, but I'm like, at the moment, I'm lapping it up because it's like, because raising kids is so full on. I'm like, I'm just like landing.
It's funny because when we all make the jokes as parents, right? Well, I can't wait till you out here in the world doing your own thing. I can't wait to boot you out the house. I was begging my baby, like, why you leaving? I ain't making you pay no rent. You ain't got to, you know what I'm saying? You ain't got no curfew. Like, why you trying to leave? She was like, because I'm grown. I'm like, so for about 6 months, I moped around. I'm where my baby's at. You feel me? I moped around all down in the mouth. And then all of a sudden I was like, but I could really be out here doing some things. Like I don't have anybody to call and check in with. Because as a mom, your kids become your parents. When they turn teenagers, they're like, Mom, where you at? Why you aren't home yet? When are you going to be home? You on a date doing your thing because you a grown up. You got kids. Text. When you coming home? Ain't you supposed to be home already? So you have to do all the same kind of checking in with your kids that you have to do with your parents when you are a teenager, right? And so it was really a
Funny.
different thing. And I kind of probably took it to the extreme because I was like, I got a new car. I don't have any obligations. I work for myself. I was like, you know what? Let me go on and take this little road trip across the country and see the great
Amazing.
American Southwest. And I was planning on doing the trip in 2 weeks and got caught
Wow.
up. It's so, this country that we live in is so miraculous. It's so beautiful. And
Mm,
what happens is the noise and the chaos of those in power make it impossible for you to see that you are always surrounded by magic. Always, every day, no matter where you are. You are always surrounded by magic. Not
yeah.
only that, I'm telling you, I know a lot of y'all it's going to be hard to hear. But not
Mm,
only are you daily surrounded by magic, but despite
mm,
the noise, child, the good on this planet still always outweighs the bad. Always, always. But if you stay here in this cycle of noise and chaos and
mhm.
this fear mongering that literally bleeds you dry energetically, you will
Mhm.
miss the majesty of the moment. You will. I had
Yeah.
so many in 6 weeks, child. I had so many literally miraculous moments, but I
Mm,
made that so. I told Spirit when I decided to make this road trip across the country to come meet this family I'd never met. I said this whole road trip is going to be a ceremony.
mm.
My prayer before getting on the road, I got 3 readings done just to make sure I wasn't tripping. I went, I went to 3 different readers in 3 different states. I was like, okay, am I being crazy? Is this really, is this out of control? 3 different readings. One of the elders who since transition told me this journey that you are about to make is going to change everything for you. He said it's going to change your entire life. He said it's not only going to change your life, Cassandra. He said everybody around you is going to be changed by this experience that you have. I was like, okay, that's what I
Mhm.
needed to hear. That's what I
Yeah,
needed to hear.
beautiful.
And so so my prayer
Mm,
all the way across the road, all the way across the country was allow me to be open to receive what is for me, even if it makes me uncomfortable. Allow me to be open to receive what is for me, even if it makes
mhm,
me uncomfortable. That's the point. That's the part. Is we don't like to be uncomfortable.
mm,
We don't, even if it means there is a massive blessing waiting on the other side, we want to bypass the discomfort to just get the blessing. You feel me? And
mhm.
baby, when I tell you that the mother showed her ass, she showed her ass the whole trip. Some of the shit that happened to me on the road, every time I tell the story, people are like, you were lying. There's no way that happened. There's no way that happened. There's no way.
Mm,
Every single day was extraordinary. Of 6 weeks, every single solitary day was extraordinary. And that's what liberation does, by the way. That's what liberation does. I'm telling you, and I tell my followers, there's a card in my deck, my tarot deck that I read, which is the Medicine Woman Inner Guidebook, and I don't even remember the card that it is, but there's a quote from it that I am obsessed with. She says, so the card is speaking to you as if it's the goddess speaking to you, right? And she says that the whole card is about, it's the chariot card, as a matter of fact. It's the chariot card. And the chariot card is about taking the time in between struggles, taking the time to integrate what you've learned, to welcome the victory. Like if you persevere through something, like you need to celebrate the victory. But we, especially as women, as constant perpetual crisis managers, you know what I'm saying? We never take the time, even with small victories, to say, you know what, I did that shit. To pop our collar, to be like, girl, you did that. You did. You need to have a party. You need some ice cream today, girl, because you did that. You did that. You know, we don't ever take the time
No.
to celebrate the small victories. And she said, if you do, in this card, she's talking about how important it is to celebrate the small victories, because the celebration of the small victories, first of all, gets you out of this cycle of crisis managing. You understand? It does, because it allows you to really recognize the power that you possess, and that you're not being tossed around in this body that you don't have any control over, to process the victory and then take the necessary time to rest in between each victory. That's the other thing. So when you look at the chariot card, this guy is on this horse and the stallion is like up, you know, like with his paws raised, and the man is on top of the horse with his staff and his spear raised. And he's like, we did that. And the horse is like, I don't know what's happening, but yes, I'm excited too, right? Like it's this whole vibe and this whole energy of like victory. And when the first time I read that card, I was like, you know what it reminds me of? It's like all of these stories about like the Roman Empire or the Greeks, you know, whenever they would win a war or a battle, the men would come home into the city, right? And they would be on horseback, trotting on horse, and everybody would be throwing confetti and like, whoa, they did that. And they would feel it like they did it too, right? And then what would happen is everybody wanted to help the men celebrate. So they would participate in all kinds of debauchery. There would be women dancing and fornicating, and there would be alcohol and big old giant mugs of beer, and everybody would be celebrating. And then the men would be resting for a month. They would be resting, nurtured, people giving them baths, you know what I'm saying? Like literally the whole community participating in their very necessary restful period. We ain't got that. Women ain't got that. Women don't have the confetti parades and the the men or the women that's going to come in and rub us down for a month so we can recover and integrate what we have learned. Now, I'm being funny, but there's this process now that we call disaster amnesia, right? Disaster amnesia, where you go from crisis to crisis to crisis to crisis. And doing that and never having the time to integrate between crises does not allow you to adequately prepare for the next crises. You're constantly running on adrenaline, exhausting yourself, because you don't have the time to say, okay, this is what happened in the last crisis. This is what I've learned from it. This is how I can prepare so I can be better, because I didn't know to do this, and this for the last crisis. So now the next time there's a crisis, I know I need to have this, and this. I need to have some food stocked, or I need to have a first aid kit or whatever. So I don't have to be stressed out the next time something outside my control happens. I can be prepared and I can stay calm, cool, and collected. But what these patriarchal societies and governments do is to actually purposefully keep you in a state of perpetual crisis, so that you don't have the ability to prepare, so that you don't have the ability to rest, to integrate. Why? Because if you rest, if you are well rested, genuinely well rested, not you pass out onto your bed because you exhausted, genuinely rest, genuinely have time to integrate what you have learned from experience to experience, what is the first thing anybody, but especially women, going to be doing? Plotting on how to make their lives better, plotting on how to quit their job, how I can transition out of this job I hate to doing something that make me some money without the stress and without the boss. The first thing we're going to do, if we have a full 16 hours of actual rest, actual fully supported rest, we're going to be scheming about how to overthrow the system. Like, how can we make the world better? And that's what they know, and that's what they fear. And so that's why we have to be forced into this perpetual state of chaotic fear mongering, despair mongering. Oh my God, we're powerless, and the only thing that we can do is continually yield power to men in positions of power, and that's not the way. And so she says in the overall takeaway in the card is if you, human, are the avatar through which my will is done, which we are.
Mm.
She said, I can do what I need to do. She said, but it is only through, this is a quote, it is only through a well rested and relaxed you that I do my best and most magical work. So sit back and watch me work. Like, chill. You know what I mean? So, yes.
Yeah. So and on that note, yeah, I I loved what you were saying about how important it is for us to use our hands as
Oh,
women,
yes.
because we have this, and you explained this, we have this absolute, you've just said it, bombardment of information, and this bombardment of um things to make us in fear, this bombardment of toxins, this bombardment.
Yes.
And I've felt it myself because I've had, like, I talking about birth, and it's really cool you've touched on everything that you've said so far, because I've just been unpacking. I had a really traumatic birth, not nowhere near what we all have different journeys.
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
I've been searching and reading your book, not your book, reading the book. Isn't it funny? People say it's your book. Was part of my search. I was like, why did my mother always say you're a this and you're a that, and throw these kind of quite
Mm,
churchy, yucky,
yes.
witchy, like you're this, and I've felt the same as you. I have felt my whole life I, why did I not fit in? There's something, why am I so different? And it's
Yes.
funny how we're all finding each other. I've found you, and I'm like, and I have to hit the same thing in the back of my mind. There's something off. And then my mum sent me to like a Catholic, a Catholic girls' school with nuns, and
Mm,
to straighten me out because I
bless
had a
you.
boyfriend too early, and we were being a bit too inappropriate in the basement. And oh my God, I kicked those bleachers, and I hated hated it. I
Yeah.
hated it. And there was something
Yes.
deep in me, like,
Yes.
"Urgh," this
Yes.
like, that I didn't know, that I
Yes.
was like, I hate this. There was this deep, I don't like this. And there's been other things in my life, like a friend of mine's very, very churchy. And I'm just like, and I love and adore her so much. She's like my second family. And she said, and her daughter was singing at the church, and I was like, oh my God, I'd love to come and hear it. And she goes, I'll send you a live of the church so you can see. But she knew that I couldn't handle it. It's so
Mm,
interesting. She knew I
mm,
couldn't be in that environment.
yeah.
I love and respect everyone. I've got no, like, I'm just, I love and respect everyone. There's no judgment. There's no nothing.
Yeah.
I'm not, but there's
Mm-hmm.
been something in me. And when I read those chapters in the book, and I'm going to start digressing, about the witches, and I'm just like, and then the other thing that's happened is now I've moved to this beautiful place, and I'm finding my people, and I'm feeling energetically that I'm meant to be on this land in this
Yeah.
area.
Mm-hmm.
We've got this goddess circle, like that
Mm-hmm.
and it's just happened. And
Mm-hmm.
like now I'm in this, and I've had these visions of I need to create a circle, and then these other women are saying the same, like, and we've created, it's not, and of course I've had these visions of this like circle,
Right.
but
Right.
we're at a coffee shop, and we're talking, and we've got like this woman who invited me, and then we've got another person who's had, she's done a lot of plant medicine, and been in the jungle and done heaps of ceremony work, and then we've got another person who arrived, but we've got all these people that are supporting, going, what do you think? And then we've got someone who almost feels like she was like 20 years more
Mm-hmm.
deep diving, who was then mentoring this person. And then we were all like supporting and having, and then there's another person she said, I remember, she's like, I remember the cell. She can see everything on a cellular level. She's like, and she was explaining, right, but I keep thinking this, she goes, she's explaining, we were a cell, and now and then we've multiplied, and recently she's like, I'm seeing that we're going backwards, that we're
Mm-hmm.
going backwards, we're going back to the cell. And she's like explaining it. She's then digesting these conversations into this molecular, like, I'm like, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm quite new to this. I'm only quite recently awoken, whatever. And I'm like in this, and I'm getting like stomach cramp because I'm like, I'm trying to absorb and I shouldn't be. And she's going to don't take it on, don't take it on. I'm like, oh my God, I'm like cramping because I'm trying to absorb this. And I'm like, my head's going, how am I in this circle and around these
Oh,
people? And whew.
oh, oh. Okay.
So
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 here,
where I'll
go
let,
ahead.
but what I was coming to was the importance of hands, but I've just gone way off.
No. Go
Way
ahead.
off.
No, please. There is no
Anyway,
going
no, no,
off
but
because what you just said is really, 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 really powerful. But keep
okay.
going. I will take a note. Keep going.
No, I think I'm just that the power of the circle and the power that we have of coming together, and that and it's that yeah there's something going on that that's gridding this earth, this gridding of, and we're all seeing it, but we're seeing it in different ways. But there is some, yeah, but I think that's what that was that the importance of us using our hands, like because of
Yes.
the information overload was
Yes.
one thing.
Yes.
And then I just and the importance of and I had another guest talking about men on my podcast, the importance of healthy rituals, which is a really interesting term, not
Yeah.
like none of us in that circle, we don't drink alcohol, we don't go out and party, we're quite introverted, but we need that support, we need those conversations. And how, I mean, it was deeper. We were talking about our heads being chopped off, and this woman was like, "Yep, I've been right through, like, there, and I was a man in that past lifetime. My head was chopped off, and I had to go through it, and then and I saw my family. And these are conversations. I'm like, holy shit, what am I? How did this? And
So
that's just how we
in
talk.
this small piece that you just raised brought up four different issues that I've been obsessing over for the last 48 hours. Just these four things out of just that little bit that you just said.
Wow.
And it's deep because one, you mentioned like time and like the cell, right? And how in this circle you're experiencing certain things, right? This woman talking about the cell and how she could see the cell, right? I don't know if you've ever, because you also said something that I find interesting. I talk about a lot. You talked about healthy rituals and how none of you
Mm,
smoke or none of you drink alcohol or none of you
yeah.
party, and labeling this healthy ritual. I have some
Mm.
ideas and some theories, my dear,
Mm.
because as a doctor, I had always pondered why certain things have impacts on people that are one way, and those same identical things will not have that same impact on other people. Like, what is it in us that makes us respond to whether it's substance or behavior or whatever in an extraordinarily different way? Like, for example, one person can do one line of coke and be an
Mm.
instant addict, like, oh my God, this is amazing, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And then another person can party for a good 3 years and it's just a party, and they're like, okay, that was fun, on to the next thing, right? Like, they don't have, we say, oh, it's just an addictive personality. I think that's a cop out. Now, as a doctor and as a recovering addict, I was an addict for a long time before going into medical school. And so trying to understand the mentality, the psycho emotional aspects of addiction, and also trying to understand the biology, the chemistry of addiction,
Mm.
and why a person who may be a behavioral addict, like a porn addict or a shopping addict or gambling addict, has the same biochemistry as a person who is doing substance, alcohol, drugs, whatever. So I was really fascinated by like the science of what creates addictive behavior. And without going too deep on it, because it will have to be a workshop on its own,
Oh.
but the thing about addiction that is well documented now for like the last literally 80 years, but is kept from the general public because addiction serves the state. Okay. Addiction is a byproduct of the patriarchy. The patriarchy
Mhm.
really needs people to be addicts, to be out of control. And the foundational basis of addiction, addictive behavior, whether it's psychological or emotional addictions, because now they got a new concept, child, that's in what is it called, the DSM, the diagnostic manual, systems manual, or something like that, of mental illness. in the United States, and child addiction to rejection. I was like, damn. Like what are we not addicted to? What are we not addicted to? But
Oh,
thinking back about the studies that I've learned about, videos, old school documentaries from like the 60s and 70s about creating addiction in animals and curing those same animals of addiction in the
yeah.
70s, and that the basis of addiction in every single scenario is hopelessness.
Hmm.
Hopelessness is the cause of all addiction. People become fearful of, quote, substance, or they become fearful of, like, behaviors or whatever, because we, especially people our age, we, say no to drugs and dare and, just say no, and all the after school specials about how if you just smoke one joint, you'll be an addict for the rest of your life. Like all of this terrible fear mongering about not using substance, and we call it substance, but it's medicine. All of these things have existed for many millennia before the advent of any patriarchal tradition, and in a society where people are generally happy, in a society where happiness is the default, in a society where you are not marred with perpetual war and aggression, do you still have the tendencies towards addictive behavior, looking for outlets of reprieve from an overall situation of hopelessness? Does the
Mm,
substance have the same impact on you biochemically that it does when you are in a perpetual state of crisis, fear, and shock?
yeah.
Do you understand what I'm
Very.
saying? And
Absolutely.
so, even though, because I drink, right? And I said that once I got clean from substance, from hard substance, that was the one vice I was not letting go of. I'm going to drink. I did good. I got
Hmm.
completely clean off really serious drugs. And so, this is the vice that I will keep, right? And but also knowing how to take care of myself, right? So I do liver gallbladder cleanses twice a year to give a little thank you to my liver for taking care of me while I still imbibe on those things that give me a little bit of pleasure, right?
Uh,
um so, not to go off on that, but I really think that it's important when we're talking about spiritual and ceremonial spaces, um, what it is we're truly confronted with. That's why I'm always harping this bridge of science and spirituality has got to be paramount. This is the mother's language. Science is the language of the mother, boo. It is. We always think that it's a man's thing, like
yeah.
logic and scientific method. No, it's not. What we call science in the left brain in the patriarchal world is just the evidence of the sun gone rogue. Science, true science, which is what? The science of observation and participation, to do a thing, to interact with the thing, to study the thing, to interact with it, to see how your interaction with it changes it, right? To analyze if these conditions on the outside change, will the thing itself change? This is evolution, right? The
Mm,
thing itself being observed changing in base in the changing within the context of the environment, adjusting to its environment, always seeking this place of harmonious union with this external environment. That's what evolution is. That's what the evolutionary process is. And so, if we have any kind of spirituality that is not steeped in the language of both the spirituality and science, not in some disembodied, ambiguous, the spirits and the angels and everything is out there somewhere, intangible and imperceptible, we're missing the boat. We're trying
mm.
to put a dress on patriarchy. That's all we're trying to do when we have a disembodied spirituality. And as a matter of fact, this is probably a good segue into something that Barbara Moore said much more articulately about this thing. If you don't mind me reading a half a second. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, it's one of my um oof, this book. Okay. It's like one of my favorite one of my many favorite quotes from her. Like this one I just turned to, I'll just say this is in the chapter of called The Machine on page 365. Second paragraph down, it says, so long as governments can control female reproduction in any way, the workforce can equally be controlled. Duh. Vice versa. If So let's see, vice versa. It will be possible for governments and global corporations to totally control the population of workers so long as they are able to control populations of females as breeding machines or non breeding machines. No one can be free unless females are free to control our own sex and our own reproduction. If we do not control our own bodies, they are controlled by the boss, and that keeps the boss in power forever. And so, even in a lot of these, while I look for this other thing that I wanted to read to you, even as I have been in these Marxist Leninist spaces, this book,
To see those smile.
um, it's so interesting how even though Marx and Lenin and Stalin and Mao and Che Guevara and Fidel Castro and who was some of the and Ho Chi Minh, they all had something wonderful to say about the female proletariat and the female working class and the role and the role that women have to play in the revolution and the liberation of the proletariat. But in every last single one of these organizations, there wasn't a single goddamn woman in a position of power. Not one. Not one. And if she was close to a single position of power, she was still articulating and parroting the fucking philosophy of males. Do you see? So, for someone to say, well, there are plenty of women in positions of power around the world, but does that matter if they're still patriarchs? What does it matter that they have vaginas, that they might have a uterus? That's not what we're talking about. When we talk about patriarchy, when we talk about the needing for the changing of the guard and for women to be in positions of power, first of all, we're not talking about within a pyramidal construct. One, we don't need for the president of the United States to happen to have a uterus if she is still executing power from within the context of a pyramid where she is still holding the position of power for the few males that she still has to concede to, she still has to yield to. We're talking about power from the center in a harmonious, egalitarian way. Mothers leading from the center, grandmothers leading from the center, so that everyone is cared for. There is nobody left behind. There is nobody sleeping on the goddamn roads. There's 65,000 homeless people in the city of Los Angeles. In a state that has the fourth largest economy on earth, and you can't solve the bare minimum, which is finding a steady, safe place for people to sleep who pay taxes. Do you know that the damn income, the sales tax in this city is 11%? 11% sales tax on everything you buy. You being taxed 11%. So homeless people spend billions of dollars in money just to survive on the street, but they have no representation because they're homeless. They can't vote because they're homeless, but they're still paying hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in sales tax just in the city alone, being literally robbed blind. And so you can't solve the problem because there is an incentive for you to get these hundreds of millions of dollars from these people who do not matter in the society. There's an incentive for homelessness. The Pope, who was it? Pope John Paul the second, or the second, whoever he was, is like the church would fail to. He made a public declaration: the poor will always be with us. For if there is no poor, there is no church. That's what he said. For if there is no poor, there is no church. There's an incentive that we have in keeping a great majority of the people of the planet held hostage in poverty. You feel
Well,
me?
there's a great sentence in the Great Closet Mother about poverty. It's just another control.
I need to send you pictures. I think you were saying
Yes.
something in the breakdown that you gave me of like what you wanted to cover, where you were saying something to the effect of how I broke down the book. Is that what you asked me? Something about how I broke down?
Do you think you could do it? Do you
Yeah.
think you could do it? This
Yeah.
is like a challenge.
If
Do
I would
you
have been
think you
thinking
could
about
do
it
it?
before this, I would have just sent you what I sent out to the people who were doing the who were participating in the book club. But I can give you Cliff's Notes version and send you the pictures later. But what we did, the way I broke down the book specifically was to facilitate the book club because it's so dense. Like I said, there are no chapter numbers. And what I thought about was like, damn, how these preachers do this shit? They just say, congregation, turn to chapter so and so, chapter verse so and so, verse so and so, right? I'm like, and they just do that shit right off the top of their head. Turn with me to John 28, verse
Yeah.
whatever, and they just do that. I'm like, that shit flows. How do I do that? And so, girl, I
I
literally wrote
know.
down this book after 4 times of reading this book. Okay, I'm like, okay, I have to facilitate a book club, a book study. How am I going to do this in a way that either, if because a lot of people were reading along with the PDF version of the book, which does not correspond with the page numbers of the physical book. So I was like, okay, the way I have to do this in a way that we're all on the same page, even though they are different, was
Mm.
first, I was like, we need to be able to read this joint like the Bible that it is. Okay. So the first thing that I did, if you let me turn off this light so there's not a glare on it. So the first thing that I did, yeah, that's better, was I highlighted sections of the book. Okay. So you'll see that I took different color highlighters and then I sent these as pictures to the people who are participating in the Facebook group. You'll see numbers, which is actually dates, next to each highlighted section, which is the sections that we were going to cover in a single Facebook in a single book club. Because the first chapters, the first big sections, maybe the first big 2 sections, the chapters are very, very short. So we were able to move through 2, 3, 4
Yeah.
chapters in a single 2-hour, 3-hour book club session. So you'll see that this was week 1 and this was week 2 because they were very short, and this was week 3, week 4. And then the other thing that you have to do if you're going to study this in a way where you're not constantly thumbing through trying to find what you were looking for, is I actually, when I read the book the second time, I actually went through and numbered each of the chapters because the chapters were not numbered. This made it really, really difficult for people to find the section that they wanted to find when I read it on Facebook. So when I read it on YouTube, that was the first thing that I did, was number each one of the chapters so that I could say where I was reading, as well as with the so that's the thing that I encourage everybody to do when you have the
Yeah.
book,
Yeah.
is to
Totally.
go ahead and number the chapters. Then the last thing that initially people were like, that's a little bit much. I'm a Virgo, and so people always be thinking Virgos are extra anyway, but Virgos see what y'all cannot. The world couldn't move the way that it does without a Virgo in it. You understand what I'm saying? And so we always understand like the strategy. We always understand the systems and to make things flow easier. So the third thing that I did not require it, but I encouraged it, was just like your Bible. I said, go through and number your paragraphs. Y'all see that?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Number your paragraphs. Now,
Yeah.
as the chapters get longer,
Wow.
Barbara Moore was a poet, so she could get a little bit wordy. You know what I mean? She could go off a little bit. Some of her paragraphs were a whole page long. So let me see if I can find one section where I did that. So like if I went into a paragraph of hers that was like exceptionally long. Now some of y'all are young and y'all might not be familiar with when we were in high school, you and I don't know how, education is there, but here, if we had a book that we were assigned, like in our English, if we had to read a book, the first thing that we had to do was do an outline of the book. We would have to turn in an outline of the book. So that's all I basically did with this book, was to do the book, break the book down just like we did our old school outlines when we were kids. So if there was a paragraph, I'm trying to find where I did it once. Yes. No, my bad. Up here. So if I found a page where either the paragraph was exceptionally long or the paragraph was important enough that I felt like it needed subdivisions. So here you'll see where I have on this first page here, like the numbers. Okay. So like 35, 36,
Mm.
37, 38, 39, right? And then go to the next page where it says 40,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then here. here on the inside, right? So it says 40. And then I broke that paragraph down because it was important. 40A, B, right? Before going down, yeah, to 41, right? And that just helps you, especially if you are going to be conducting a real, like, it wasn't just a book story where we were just kind of saying like what we liked about the chapter. This was a political education I was conducting.
Yeah.
What is it she's trying to communicate to us? How do we raise up our understanding about the world and apply what she just told us in 1983? How does this apply to the world that we live in now? Did what she said in this part come to fruition? Are we looking at it in real time, or was she way off base? Like really studying the process. And so, and then I started that over just like you would the Bible, with 1, 2, 3, 4 for each paragraph, for each new chapter. You see what I'm saying? And then the longer they got, right, the more breakdowns, 40A, 40B, 40C, whatever. And then obviously, tabs are my best friend. And I got about a gazillion in every book. But
it's a piece of art. It's amazing.
But that was really helpful because I started doing that, the numbering of paragraphs in every book since then. And every book since I read The Great Cosmic Mother, I was like, duh, every book should be written this way, with numbers and chapters and verses, so it's easy to find remember I was reading that section about the this and that and this and this and this. You can go right, you know exactly where it is, or at least generally where it is and what it was you were trying to recall. So I hope that answered your question. Did that answer your question? Yes? No? Was that clear? You can tell me. You can be honest. If you need more clarification, you can let me know.
No, I was just wondering whether you would be able to do a timeline, like a quick of the book. So it was like we started as a cell, and then we did what could you do a quick timeline
of the book itself?
Yeah, just a quick just.
Okay, well, let's just do it based on the table of contents, and then I'll be able to say like what came out for me in each section. First of all, let me just say, I know you were intrigued and wanted me to say something about how the book came into my life. I was still on my kind of atheist Marxist Leninist shit, but there, even as a socialist, there were things that I was just never comfortable with, but there was no place to like express those discomforts. And so this woman that I had been in the political organization with was like, yo, you need to read this book. And I read the cover. I was like, The Great Cosmic Mother, Rediscovering the Religion of the Earth. I was like, this don't sound like no shit I want to read. This sounds like some hippie shit. Like this. I was literally that blunt. I was like this, because everything I had read up until that point, I had never, as a matter of fact, when I read this book, I'd never even read a single, not one, fiction book from cover to cover in my whole life. I didn't read fiction. If it wasn't science, if it wasn't history, if it wasn't like like art stuff, I didn't read it. I didn't care. I wasn't interested in fiction. And I didn't own it. I owned 3,289 books.
I know. Look at that.
And it's only been the last maybe 10 years that I've started reading fiction. I was like, I don't have no room for fiction in my life, child. I got a world change. I was just different. And so this book, I was like, this don't appeal to my science at all. Like, Great Cosmic Mother, a white woman from Portland and a white woman from Sweden. What in the hell what could they teach me? What in the hell could I possibly learn from a white woman from Portland and a white woman from Sweden or Switzerland? And this black woman, friend of mine, was like, look, read the first chapter. And if you don't like the book, close the book, give it back to me, and we won't ever have to talk about it again. And Barbara Moore must have known that at some juncture down the road, some woman was going to be like, nope. And so the first chapter, she kicked the doors in. Everything in the first chapter started tweaking my little scientific mind. Everything in the first chapter spoke straight to my little linear, left brain, scientific, rigid ass mind, and then blew the doors wide open. It was like she knew. And then the second chapter was the chapter, to this day, is still my favorite chapter in the book, because it answered so many questions about my previous 15 years as a Marxist, as a socialist, that I still had, like, the science of socialism made so much sense to me because it was so much more radical than anything I'd ever learned. But there were still things in it that, as a young woman, first of all, I was too insecure to ask. You know what I'm saying? Being in a very patriarchally male dominated organization, I was too intimidated to question. There were so many things that I had issues with, like, here I am in an organization that says that it wants to see Black people be free and independent, and the governors of their own destiny and the return of their resources. But at the same time, these same people were so violently hostile to any expression of African spirituality. I thought that was a paradox that I couldn't reconcile. Like, they would get mad, they would get angry if we would be invited to an event and somebody is doing like a libation. Are you familiar with libation? Where you take and pour water on a plant to call the ancestors into the space, right? Oh, they would be in the back of the room scoffing. This old, one of my elders used to call it ooga booga. This old ooga booga. This old ooga. They would be so violently disturbed by any expression of African culture or spirituality. And I found that problematic, but I didn't have the language to, like, articulate why I was so uncomfortable with that. And then all these years later, the second chapter is called Marx and the Matriarchy. And it blew my whole entire mind. Every question my little baby said, because I was 24 years old when I joined the African People's Socialist Party. Every question that I ever had about spirituality, every question that I had about reconciling the chasm between, like, capitalism and socialism and spirituality and science, and why they could never coexist, or, you know, just all of these big gaping wounds, even in socialist philosophy, that could never be answered by anybody. And I think you might have heard me talk recently about, like, one of the big things that just blew my mind was, while I was a socialist, you know, one of the guys that we hold up as a great hero of, you know, revolutionary struggle is Mao Zedong. And Mao was a monster. And the fact that, as, quote, Marxist or socialist, we still hold up males who have participated in monstrous activity and behavior, but because they did one or two, quote, good things, they did one or two, quote, big things that were, quote, supposed to help people, that you just ignore the monstrous acts. You just, well, you know, the good do outweigh the bad, but in a way that you completely just slide over monstrous things that happened as a consequence. And so just recently I was talking about Mao Zedong and how I spent 15 years in a socialist organization big enough. There isn't a speech this man has spoken. There isn't a book he has written. Nothing that I haven't read about Mao Zedong, over the last 20 years. I was conducting political educations on several of his major works. Mao speaks on physical education. Mao speaks on revolutionary medicine. Mao speaks on combating liberalism. You know, what is it? What's the big one I used to love? Combat liberalism. And what's the other one? What's it called? Criticism, self-criticism, and praise. Criticism, self-criticism, and praise. The fear of responsibility. When I tell you, I spent almost 2 decades teaching from Mao as an archetype, right, of what liberation and the new society is supposed to look like. So just recently, and I had been gotten over that, but I'm just saying that's how I was taught. And so just recently, I'm searching the spiritual meaning of the sparrow, because the sparrow just keeps coming up in my life all the time. I'm like, this is so random. What is this bird trying to teach me, right? Like, this art gallery that just erected out of the ground a couple of months ago, the first exhibition in this art gallery is the Dance of the Sparrows. I was like, oh my God. I was sitting in my living room, and I always have my balcony open because my cats go in and out on my balcony. And this sparrow, a yellow sparrow, flew into my living room, posted right on my workstation where I make my jewelry, sat there and looked at me for a little bit. She was like, oh, this cool. This nice what you're doing right here. And then my cats were like, oh, no, there's somebody in the house. And so as soon as the cats approached to pounce, she ducked right back out of my balcony walkway. And so it's just been all of these things with the sparrow coming up in my life. So I start Googling the spiritual meaning
Yeah.
of the sparrow. And the first thing that comes up is this thing called the Four Pest Campaign. The Four Pest Campaign that was launched by Mao Zedong during the Great Leap Forward. It was the first big campaign that he launched under this project that he called Man Must Conquer Nature. It was a program that how did I never learn this as a socialist for 15 years? How is this never seen as something significant to teach a young socialist about the relationship that you have to have with nature? Because socialists aren't trying to have a relationship with nature. They're trying to only change the hands of the means of production. They still want to have factories and machines that devastate the planet and dig up everything. That's all they're talking about, is a change in the hands of the means of production. And so here he says the first campaign of the Chinese Communist Party, under the Great Leap Forward, was man must conquer nature. And in man conquering nature, he wanted to radically industrialize food production in China. And so he said the first thing that we have to do is kill all these pests. The first pest on the list was the sparrow. He launched a campaign against the sparrow that killed 80 million birds in a year. They said that the birds were so traumatized by the campaign. Do you hear me? By the noise pollution of the campaign. Every morning at sunrise, all of the communities would be forced to by the cadre, to come outside with giant pots and bang the pots at sun, because at sunrise is when the birds are most active. You'll hear them first thing in the morning. Beep, 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 beep. At first thing in the morning, they would have to get up and bang the pots as loud as they could for an hour to traumatize the birds, so-called chasing the birds away. So they said that the birds had become so traumatized by the morning noise that birds started having heart attacks in the sky, girl, and falling out of the sky dead. Yes. 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 They killed 80 million birds in a year. Was it 80 million? 8 million. They killed 8 million birds in a year. 8 million birds in a year. By killing the sparrow. Did you know that the sparrow is the oldest living bird on Earth from the cataclysm that killed the dinosaurs? The sparrow was the only bird that still exists from the goddamn dinosaurs. I said, what?
Wow, that's amazing.
I know. Random, but that has to be significance. How is this little bitty cute bird able to survive over all the birds from the dinosaur period? They're the oldest living bird right now on the planet, the sparrows. I was like, why are these sparrows harassing the fuck out of me? Like, they're in the Bible, they're in this freaking movie, the movie Sinners. Sparrows is in the movie Sinners. I was like, what in the world is with all these birds, right? And girl, I read that because they waged this campaign on the sparrows, that it contributed to the greatest human-caused famine in all of human history. This was in the 1950s. 75 million Chinese people died as a consequence of this campaign launched against the sparrows. 75 million human beings died in China. There are, I was reading medical studies about the Great Famine in China. Medical studies where they have been studying the long-term impact of famine. They've gone to different places studying the long-term impact, like the potato famines in Ireland, the famine caused by the British in India. So they go and study the long-term epigenetic impact of famines on subsequent generations that didn't live during the famine, but the trauma on the cellular DNA of the people who survived the goddamn famines still being evident in the blood of their offspring child. And they said that the impact of the famine, the great famine, the Great Chinese Famine, that that there are people who were born 2 generations after the famine who still can't cut and grow teeth. Girl, I was sitting here reading this goddamn medical journal. I said, oh my God, this is the most diabolical. Not only that, all these people died. And it wasn't until, because people were so scared of the Chinese Communist Party and of Mao Zedong, that it wasn't until after Mao died that people started releasing hidden records and stuff about what was actually happening in the government at the time of the Great Famine. The punchline is it was diabolical for that many people to die, but the Chinese government had hoarded enough food produced by them same starving people, because it was the people producing the food that starved. It was the rural workers. It was the farmers, the agriculturalists who took the greatest hit. Do you know that they had hoarded enough food to feed every single one of those 75 million people that died? There was enough food in the government stores to feed all those people that they let die. I said, men cannot lead. Men cannot lead, because even those that we hold up as heroes and shit because they did some singular great thing in the past, if you dig deep enough into their history, they are monsters. Men in positions of power, while patriarchy remains, they only have one go-to, and it is to harm, it is to hurt in the acquisition of power. That's what patriarchy has primed them to do. Now, I want to be clear, because people will hear it as like some kind of man bashing or something. It's not man bashing. Men have been just as harmed by patriarchy as women have. Why? Because men begin as babies. Men begin as children. They are babies first. And it is being steeped in a hostile, wicked, terrible, tyrannical environment that harms the bodies, the minds, and the spirits of male babies, pitting these babies against themselves. Imagine being a male child, breastfeeding on the only person that you know is actually God. You don't have to be able to say God for the baby to know mama can't be too far away or I'm cutting up. Where my mama at? I can't live without my mama. Where my mama at? And if they fortunate enough, they swinging off their mama's titties at least for a good 2 years. She's nursing for at least a good 2 years, if they're lucky. And to imagine being born in a world that this person in the flesh that you know is God, that you love more than anything else on earth, and from the moment you are born, feeling that love from her, and everything that exists in this society that we think is insignificant, every commercial, every cartoon, every song, every billboard, everything, we are proliferated by propaganda that teaches that little male baby that he must hate everything that she represents. He must hate everything that looks like her. He must hate everything. Can you imagine the kind of split personalities disorder that is bred in male children? So it's not man hating. When I talk about the need for a restoration of the earth under the direction of the mother, it is to rescue the whole world. It is to restore the humanity of every human being on earth. And I'll tell you, that should be hard to reconcile sometimes, because men indoctrinated with the poison of patriarchy are monstrous people. They are monstrous human
So
beings.
how, like, just to, because we could talk all day, how do we move forward? Like, like, how do we break this cycle? Like, us as women, us as people who've read this goddamn book.
So this
What
book
do we
is a great
do?
starting point. But I'm gonna tell you, I don't know if you've listened to any of the other books that I've read on my channel, but the second book that I would recommend is Pure Lust by Mary Daly. I was turned on to Pure Lust by reading The Great Cosmic Mother. When The Great Cosmic Mother, in the chapter called Marx and the Matriarchy, was talking about this study, that's how I've got to hip to this study, the search for oneness. And this study was conducted, I want to say, in 62 by 3 scientists in a psychiatric hospital. And they had this hypothesis that the root of all mental illness is premature separation from the mother, premature umbilical cord severing is what they hypothesized, and that what would happen if we had the ability to psychologically reconnect human beings to the mother, right? Could we cure mental illness? And so
Oh,
this is the compilation of the story of the study. Now, this is out of print. This is like very scientific jargon. It's not a synopsis of what happened. This is the actual study and the way that it was conducted. And it took me forever to find this book once I read about it in The Great Cosmic Mother. And I paid like 300 and some change for this book.
mhm.
So if you can find it, you're lucky. It's called The Search for Oneness.
Wow.
And and so that book, and also this book, Pure Lust by Mary Daly, were the first two major references in The Great Cosmic Mother. So I was like, all right, I got that book first, and I was like, let me just buy everything that Mary Daly had to talk about, which I
Mm,
did. This was the first book of hers that I read on my channel. And the reason I mentioned it in response to your question, what do we do? What can we do? There in the introduction of the book, that book is awesome, by the way. Pure Lust. Awesome. I'm literally listening to it every day. Every day I am listening to something from that book.
wow.
It's awesome. And one of the things that that she says that she says the responsibility of the fates is to name and rename everything, and two, to cast a global, she says, to cast a global exorcism on the minds of human beings. She said, we all possessed by patriarchy and we need global exorcism. I said, oh shit. Okay. How do you cast a global exorcism? What we're doing now. When you talk about like how people are hearing, people who 2 years ago could not hear anything about spirituality now getting their cards read, getting their charts
Yeah.
done, people who are leaving their jobs, their corporate jobs, to go and live in a community somewhere, a commune somewhere. This is the casting of the net. So you talked earlier about the woman talking about the web, right?
Mm,
And the web is a really perfect analogy, because the web exists because the spider exists. The web doesn't exist on its own. The web exists because the spider exists. The spider is the fate, whatever you want to call the fate. If you want to call it like the Morag or the Norns, or where every culture has a story about female humans being the weavers of
yeah.
human destiny and fate. Females. Why is it? That's not a stretch. That's not an esoteric statement. That is a scientific statement. When you look under a microscope now, which you are able to do, at the process of a egg and a sperm, and the sperm finally penetrates the egg, and it's marked by this spark of light, right? Where she finally accepts the little sperm, right?
Mhm.
What is that if that's not weaving? The one becomes two. The two becomes four. The four becomes eight. And so on. And it literally looks like the shaping of a web. When the cell, this single, the zygote, the embryo splits and splits and splits
Mm.
and splits. As a matter of fact, in Chinese medicine, we say this is how our meridians are formed. We call it our lifeline, right? You see your little line that goes all the way, especially when you get pregnant, you can see your little lifeline on your belly. It's real dark,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Yep, yep.
In
Got that.
Chinese medicine, we say that is the first meridian is what we call our
Mm,
lifeline. It's the ren in the front and the du in the back. They emanate both out from the genitals, the frenulum, which is that little sheet of tissue between the anus and either the scrotum, or the anus and the vaginal opening, that little flap of tissue between the two. That is the frenulum. So both the ren, the front part of the lifeline, emanates from the front part of the frenulum, and the back, which is called the du, that goes up the back, and then they both meet under the tongue. So they emanate from the frenulum, and they both meet front
wow.
and back to under the tongue. This is your
Wow.
lifeline. This is the first division that the embryo makes. The second division, where the two becomes four, that the frenulum make, is called the chong mai. which divides the body across the belly button, right? And so all of your meridians are formed by this initial cellular division where the one becomes two, and the two becomes
Mm-hmm.
four, and the four becomes 16, and so on and so on, right? And so by powers, right? And so yeah, like if you're looking at it under a microscope sped up, where from that you start to form like a little body, and you look like a little tadpole, and then you look like a little, like a little seahorse, and then you look like a little, you go through the phases of 4 billion years of evolution in 9 months. You go from a single cell organism to a human who emerges out of the abysmal waters, illuminated, just like the single cell organism that becomes amphibious and for the first time is able to creep out on dry land. You feel me? So yes, we can create a beautiful storytelling, um, esoteric story about a very real scientific phenomena that we reproduce on the microcosmic level, that we can see the evidence of in the microcosmic level. And so um that's the first thing, is to understand science. That's why I'm always saying, understand science, and you will understand the mysteries of spirit. But you
Yes.
cannot understand spirit if you are disembodied from the material world. It's impossible. You will always come to the wrong conclusion, and you will always come to a conclusion that is hierarchical and that is
Mhm.
harmful to others to benefit one. Always. So that's why people can, like Barbara Moore says in here, that the reason that, I mean, did I tell you? I don't think I told you, but when Barbara Moore's daughter reached out to me on Facebook, because I think you might have heard me say, Barbara Moore's daughter reached out to me, and Monica Zhu's granddaughter reached out to me
Wow.
as a consequence of me reading this book. Neither one of them had read the book when they reached out to me. Both of them had said this almost verbatim the same thing, that it is because of the trauma that they experienced that they had not read the book. Barbara Moore was homeless when she wrote this book. She was, as a matter of fact, after she wrote the book, she could not get a job in the colleges teaching who were using her book as the textbook for women's studies programs. So she could not even teach what she wrote in many of the colleges here in California. She was living in her car. Her and her two children, her son and her daughter, were living in her car when she wrote this book. And so when her daughter reached out to me, she said this book was the source of so much trauma for me and my brother that we never read the book. And then once our mother passed away, because both Monica Zhu and Barbara Moore have transitioned, I think both of them around 2010 ish, and that it was never something I knew I was never going to read. She said, but then I saw that you had started reading the book online, and so she said I could listen to it. I could listen to somebody read the book. She said, so you reading the book is the first time I'm hearing the content of my mother's book, and I want to thank you for that. When Monica Zhu's granddaughter reached out to me, um, which was awesome. She was adopted by Monica Zhu. She was a Congolese refugee as an infant, and so she's black. And she was adopted by Monica Zhu after her children were already grown. Monica Zhu had two adult sons, and after her sons were already grown, she adopted this girl child who was half European and half Congolese, but had been abandoned. She was a refugee, and she said, so I was with her, her whole life, writing this book and the controversy around it. I'll tell you one thing. One of the things that Barbara Moore's daughter told me that was really, really interesting was that the people who hated her mother the most were white feminists. She said the people who gave my mother the most hell, the people who hated my mother the most, were white feminists. And that the reason I brought that up is because Barbara Moore was making a charge to white women to save themselves, to rescue themselves. And the only way, in her mind, for that to happen was in their unquestioned allegiance with women of color of the world, with colonized women of the world, with oppressed women of the world, that they could not rescue themselves outside of a real, true, honest relationship with women of color of the world, with the women who are doing the most of the suffering on planet. And so, because she was very sharp in her critique, especially of white women in spiritual spaces. I want to let me find this so I don't forget it, because it's important. And I find that when I teach in spaces that are predominantly white, which I do, I find when I teach in spaces that are predominantly white, of people that I believe are genuinely trying to find an answer to what has plagued the planet. But white people's peculiar lived experience, especially at the advent of the colonial process, right? I think that white people are constantly struggling to reconcile this more recent history that they have with the rest of the world, to this history that is a pre-colonial history where they too lived like everybody else on the earth, where they worshiped the goddess, where they had this harmonious relationship with the land. And how do we reconcile, this thing that our ancestors have created and we still benefit from, and still be able to first of all, white people need to do ancestor work. I say that shit all the time. I will continue to say it for the rest of my life. White people need to be getting into ancestral work, and they don't. They want to do everything but. And the reason why, this is through personal relationships with white people in my practice and in spiritual spaces, and people who are friends to me, people who are dear to me. It is uncomfortable, the idea of doing ancestral work with white people, because of the same thing that I'm talking about. The colonial process, I'm talking about whiteness having been established by the Roman Catholic Church, by the nobility, by the aristocracy, as a weapon against the rest of the world. That is the only reason whiteness exists. I'm not talking about white skin. I'm talking about white consciousness. Whiteness as a consciousness. Whiteness as a construct. Whiteness as something now we say set them apart from the rest of the world. But what it did was, it was the final cord severing of the mother's children away from her. This is the thing that but white people are uncomfortable with, and colored folks are uncomfortable with, because we want white people to be the perpetual bad guy, the proverbial bad guy. We want to say that they're aliens or reptilians, or there's something weird about white people and why they can't get along with nobody else on earth. No, we can't have it both ways. We cannot say that mommy and I are one, and that everything that has unfolded on the planet is as a consequence of the son gone rogue, of her son dissecting, cutting himself away from her, and the only thing that can create is madness. It's the only thing that can come as a consequence of the male child being ripped away from his mother, cut away from his mother, and forgetting who his mother is. What does that mean historically? What does that mean archaeologically? How does that translate into a modern language and explanation about how to restore the planet? White people in general, and white males in particular, are the youngest evolutionarily, white males are the youngest human beings on earth. White males are the personification of the sun. White males are the personification of the sun. It's literally marked here. We call this a positive sign, but doesn't this look just like your Christian cross? And what does utmost yang, this space right here, where no yin is present, no black is present, no yin, no feminine energy is present, we call that utmost yang. It's high noon in the summer. High noon in the summer in the desert. High noon in the summer in the desert. No yin present, no water, no trees, no animals. Even the animals is under the dirt trying to hide from the sun because it's destructive. This symbol, which means positive, literally is the representation of what? God that has completely disappeared any aspect of the mother. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, who is absolutely white, because right here there would be no yin present, absolute whiteness, right? Here its opposition, which we call quote negative, is utmost yin. This is a dark moon at midnight, a dark moon at midnight, near the water, in the water, whatever, like utmost yin. Okay. The reason that this becomes important in understanding a political scenario, the political world, because yin and yang, at least according to Lao Tzu, explains the entire universe. Every attribute in the universe, everything in the entire universe, from the micro all the way to the extreme macro, everything is explained by the yin and yang. This symbol is a 5-dimensional symbol. It's not 2-dimensional. It's a 5-dimensional symbol. Um, um, Incorporating past, present, and future as simultaneously existing. Male, female, and all. This is absolute male. No yin. These are what you call binaries in gender politics. These are the binaries. Absolute male, no yin present. Absolute female, no yang present. Everything else is all of the dynamics in between. So gender is not binary. That's why this is the basis for which you can say gender is not binary, because everything that exists in between makes up the whole. This is one. This is one. These are the two extreme personifications within the one. We all have this. We all are male and female. We all have male and female hormones. We all have different varieties of expressions of these extremes, right? This is black, this is white, this is utmost white, this is utmost black. And guess what? We got races all along the between, right? So you got red in here and yellow and black and green and all the different races and all the different genders, because this is one. This is the dynamics that is the great cosmic mother. This is her. So this is no different. This is an expression of the cosmic egg. This is an expression of the atom. This is the spark of life that exists within the primordial dark. This is the connection that the yang has always to its mother, to keep it from going out of control and becoming destructive. Everything can be explained here. And I'm not talking about in some disconnected metaphysical way. I'm saying that the hope for humanity, the hope for the world, one, is bridging this gap, because white people have a role to play. White people have a role to play, and fear is what perpetually keeps them from playing this role. It is the fear of ridicule, it's the fear of judgment, it's the fear of, well, if we do the right thing, then we'll be poor too. It's all this kind of weird ass shit. It's the fear of, if black people or red people or brown people or yellow people have power, then they gonna do to us what we did to them. It's all these ideas that have no basis in the real world that are perpetuated by your bosses, that are perpetuated by your owners, that are perpetuated by your former bourgeoisie, that are perpetuated by your church, that are perpetuated by the white male father God that exists in your head. That's the only place that he exists, is in your head. Because every father that has seeded some child, guess what? He was a son before he was ever a father. That's this right here. Yeah. He was a son before he was ever a father, but the mother has always been. The mother has always been. She was never a daughter before she was a mother. She was the mother first. And then we say it in science, child. When we talk about, say this is the atom, okay? This is the atom. Whenever our atoms need to, it's called apoptosis. When a cell dies and creates a new cell, a new version of itself so we can still function. We call that apoptosis. Cell death to generate the new cells. But guess what happens? That old dead cell reproduces what it calls a daughter cell. There ain't no son cell, only daughter cells in the scientific, assessment of how we continue, how they say we are a whole new person every 7 years. That's how it's through the reproduction of healthy daughter cells. Do you know what a son cell is in this scenario? It is a cell that has gone rogue. It is a cell that becomes a mutative cell that is the seed for cancer. That's what a son cell is.
Oh gosh, that's another whole. Zach Bush I saw a reel I love Zach Bush. He's doing some beautiful work. Dr. Zach Bush.
I don't know who
He's
that
doing
is.
some, oh my goodness. He is doing some beautiful work. Oh my God.
You
Yeah,
have to
he's doing some,
type me his name in the email
oh,
so I can look him up.
he is doing some beautiful work. And he was so funny that you bring this up, because he said exactly the same thing, that it takes on a whole life of its own. It has, yeah,
You want
I'll
to know
find it
why?
for you.
Because the world has been flipped upside down. So this we say is positive, right? And we always talk about positive like it's a great thing. Positive thinking and the power of
Yeah,
positive manifestation. And you
yeah,
just don't
yeah,
want to
yeah.
be negative and get rid of the negative thinking and negative. The literal world has been transformed upside down because in
Mm,
science, in health science, right? The
mhm,
cells that are considered uh, uh,
mm.
the cells that are considered harmful, the cells that are considered disease causing, the cells that are considered uh, the most damaging are unpaired positive ions. You know it if you listen. What do they say? That the way that you can cure cancer and cure diseases and get rid of stress is what? Through negative ion therapy. That you have, and where do negative ions exist the most? They exist near running and open water, the oceans. That's why you
Yeah,
always feel
yeah.
so good when you go sit out at the
Mhm.
beach. It's because of the negative ions coming
Yeah.
off the waves. Or if you live by a river, or if you live by waterfalls, or if you live in
Mm,
densely forested woods. This is where, quote, negative ions exist in bounty. And they always trying
right.
to reproduce negative ions in like shoes and blankets and shit like that. Why? Because the
Mm,
negative ions, listen to what I'm saying. The negative
mhm.
ions will literally scour the system and look for those unruly, unpaired, unchecked positive ions, partner with them to make them inert, to make them non damaging. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm always
Mhm.
saying that the only hope for the future is for the mother to subdue her rogue son. Because when he
Oh
is
my God.
rogue, meaning when he has forgotten who he is apart from the mother, Lao Tzu said that the yang is always destructive. The energy of yang is always destructive, and that the only way it is beneficial is in a harmonious relationship where it is anchored and covered by its mother. That's it. And so think about this where our earth is concerned. The reason that our planet
Beautiful.
and this solar system looks the way that it does and it's so bountiful and everything just grows so freely, and we grow up thinking the sun gives us life. The sun gives us life. No, the fuck it don't. And even modern science says that now. The sun does not give us life. The sun assists the mother in the maintenance of life. Do you understand? Because it is the yin. It is the yin that is the earth. It is the yin that is the atmosphere. We breathe air, but we think we breathe in air. We're not breathing air. We're breathing water. We're breathing gaseous H2O. That's what we are breathing. That little blue hue that we call the atmosphere around our planet that just filters out enough UV rays to make the plants happy and to make the animals happy, you feel me? But not so many that it burns everything up so that it looks like the Sahara Desert. That is what the scientists now call, the ancients used to call, but the scientists now have gotten hip to the game because they all Johnny come lately, the breath of the earth, that it is actually the respiration of the planet itself, which is water, which is mist, which is the Krebs cycle. We learned about the Krebs cycle, how you got the ocean and the little arrow, and the ocean will evaporate, and then eventually the
Mhm.
clouds get bigger and bigger, and then it'll rain, and then it'll seep into the. So do you think that that's a straight line? No. We literally live in what we call the upper firmament. The upper firmament ain't heaven, child. The upper firmament is our atmosphere. It is gaseous water because oxygen is yang. Oxygen is yang. And so when you look at an oxygen tank for a person who may need super concentrated oxygen, what is there on the oxygen tank? A big old warning sign with some big old flames on it because oxygen is yang. Yang is always destructive. It is flammable. Not only is it flammable, oxygen is explosive. And it is only by being partnered with those two little hydrogen atoms that make it water that is in a gaseous form that can allow you to benefit from the oxygen that you are breathing because it's got two little mamas on the side of it holding it down so that it does not become toxic. Even that little oxygen tank that you breathe out of, the doctor will tell you only take so many breaths a day because it will cause it'll cause oxidative stress. What do I mean by that? When you cut an apple, as soon as you
Mm-hmm.
penetrate the peel on that apple, oxidation starts to happen. It starts to get brown. It starts to decompose in its exposure, right? The same thing happens with us if we're breathing too much, quote, raw, unpaired oxygen. Unpaired how? With them two little mama hydrogen bonds that make it now water as opposed to just straight oxygen. I'm telling you, it's everywhere. I'm telling you, it's everywhere. And we
Mm.
say it every day and still don't know what we're saying. Negative ions are always healing, always reparative, always restorative, always transformative. Positive ions are literally the sun rebelling against the mother.
Ah, I
Mm-hmm.
love that. Yeah. Because my journey, the beginning of my journey was all about that. It's funny,
What,
and it's always
healing?
come the full that. Yep, it's like it's come back to like that when I first got into like how am I going to heal myself? How am I going to heal myself? It was actually all about was actually water and how important it is to reduce the oxidative stress. And I got involved in it through looking at water and how yeah, especially molecular hydrogen, like trying to reduce the oxidative stress, grounding. Why I'm in the middle of like
Yep.
I'm in a small beach community.
I'm gonna tell
I'm
you,
walking on the beach every day in the
now
forest.
me having 4 degrees in alternative medicine,
Yeah,
having
it comes
done
in
a
full
lot of
circle.
things the hard
Reduce
way.
oxidative stress. Reduce
Well,
oxidative
not just
stress.
reducing the
Grounding.
oxidative stress, going to school for that long, learning so many different styles of
Mm,
alternative medicine, I've come to a conclusion, child, that
mm,
even these spaces make 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 the simple complicated.
yeah.
That's my position. It makes the simple complicated. And so when I talk about
Mm,
Mary Daly talking about the cure for humanity is to cast a global exorcism on the world, I mean, scientifically, what does she say? She said, "Cast a global exorcism on the planet." How does that translate? How can that translate scientifically with what we know about water, with what we know about oxidative stress, with what we know about what's the other one? You know, uh, Dr. Masaru Emoto and the hidden messages in water. What does it mean? How does this translate this? How does this translate this one here? The biology of belief with Dr. Bruce Lipton talking about how we can use our belief and how if only 10% of the global population accepts a new idea that it will go quantum, that it will become. What does this mean? Where water is concerned, where thinking is
and
concerned,
do you
where
know what I've
what does
received
it
this
mean?
week?
What does it mean
I've received
scientifically, though? Say that again.
I've received a book called The Fourth Phase of Water. Just this week, just arrived. Do you want this
I haven't
book? And
heard of
I'm
that. I'm
like,
gonna have to write that. You're gonna have to email that one to me too.
the fourth phase of water, because our bodies have the fourth phase of water. It's water with information, right? That
Mm-hmm.
our bodies. So yeah, I was just like, it's funny. Like you just meet someone and they're like, oh, and you get a conversation all of a sudden, and alkalis all die because we can't. We acidity is going to kill us.
Well, I'm gonna tell you
So,
again. This is the reason that I'm looking through all these books. Hold on, there's one more I wanted to bring
funny.
out. Where is it? I may not be able to reach it. Oh, here it is. And this one, The Hidden Life of Trees. You feel me? What do all these books have in common? Why would I mention all of these books when talking about casting a global? There's another one too. I can't think of the name of it right off the top of my head. When I'm talking about casting a global exorcism on humanity. Listen, we're talking about all of this information that we've learned over years, like about water and about trees and about our relationship to oh my god, what's the word I'm looking for? Uh ooh, it's right on the tip of my tongue. Um,
I remember all those little
mycelium,
sounds.
the mycelium network, the mycelium
Oh
network,
my gosh. Oh,
right?
now we're getting really spicy.
Um, well, I just want you to follow me because I'm not trying to be complicated. I'm trying to
No.
uncomplicate. I'm trying to because that's the other thing about the mother, man. She is simple. I'm always talking. I know you don't watch me often, but there's something I'm always talking about. How the Bible says. The Bible says something to the extent of the adversary is the author of all confusion. The adversary is the author of all confusion. I was like, oh my God, yes. Simplify, simplify. The mother is not trying to keep secrets from you, honey. She is not trying to create secret societies. She's not trying to keep everything a mystery. She's not telling you that only a select few have the ability to understand what I am saying. She is, that's the why I teach the way that I do. So if at any juncture, whether it's in my practice with patients that I'm working with, I am trying to simplify because oddly enough, it is when things become simplified and people have, wherever they are and their understanding, the ability to immediately comprehend something that has been elusive to them. This is where empowerment comes from. This is where that thing that she is trying to communicate to them becomes a part of them. It is through the simplicity, man. And so when we're talking about the water and the trees and the mycelium network, and we get real deep sometimes, we get real wormhole deep. We don't have to do that. It is in our face if we understand the language of simplicity. She is always showing us the most direct and easiest route to what it is we are trying to accomplish. We complicate because that's how we have been taught by our Father God. Everything that he does is to mystify, is to create mystery, is to create confusion, is to hog tie certain information to himself and keep it from everybody else so that his mediocrity is never exposed. The lie that he has cast on the planet is never exposed. Do you understand? And so, even when we're talking about casting a global exorcism on the planet, which is why I wrote the global conspiracy to right all wrongs. This is the exorcism because it is clear and simple and easy enough for even somebody with a third grade education to understand. It is not some secret message or code you have to decipher, and you have. It's not the mother's doing, and the Bible even says it. He didn't say the devil. The Bible didn't say the devil. Didn't say Satan. Didn't say Lucifer. Didn't say Beelzebub. It said the adversary. Who is the adversary? He who causes conflict and confusion. What does war mean? The etymology of the word war means to create conflict and confusion. That's what it means. That's all it is. And so she is saying, baby, simplify. Simplify, simplify, simplify. So, how does this translate? If we know that the science of the mother's breath, water, the science of the mother's body, water, water in the gaseous form, water in the mass form, right? Water, 80%, 86% of our body, water, trees, the roots that hold, the branches that hold, right? She's saying that the mycelium thrives in a warm, moist, dark environment, water. And we, as a planet, as a very water based planet, we can assume, we can deduce that if we're 86% water, then the planet is 80%, 86 approximately percent water because there's more water than there is landmass, right? And that water is the primary. They say that water has more memory storage capacity than any supercomputer created by any human. And how there were these German scientists who picked up the work of Dr. Emoto, and it's mind blowing beyond comprehension. So he did the water projects where he's like taping words, just not even saying the words, just taping the words on the water and watching the molecular structure of the water be transformed, right? Well, the German scientists picked up where he left off, and they took water from the same source, right? And they would put a flower. They were like, we want to really focus on the memory aspect or the memory capacity of the water. So we took water from the same source and we put a living flower in the water. and left it there for a few seconds and took the flower out of the water. And then we took one drop of the water and put it on a little slide and looked at it under the microscope. And you could see a perfect image of the flower that had just been placed in the water. They were like, oh my God, this is amazing. Well, let's see if it'll do it again. And so they took a yellow flower and put it in the same water. And now they see an image of the pink flower and the yellow flower in the same drop of water, right? And how this translates even into the emergence of culture and philosophy and all of this shit. Like I was telling my listeners that I learned that in Ifa tradition, they say that the greatest crime, the greatest sin a human can commit is to defecate in fresh water. I said, I was like, oh my God. Like when my teacher taught me this, I was like, oh my God, we are all doomed. We are all doomed. We are all doomed, right? That the greatest sin a human can commit is to defecate in fresh water. I said, oh my God, right? So my brain starts whirling, whirling, whirling. I was like, what does this mean? And how? Because Ifa tradition is about 3,000 years old. So how does this become a philosophy that they say, okay, well, the greatest sin, murder existed then, theft existed then. So how did they come to the conclusion that the greatest sin that a human being can commit is to defecate in fresh water? This is where science and spirit meet. Because most people in early societies would prop up townships, clan groups. They would live near bodies of water, fresh water preferably. They would set up their encampment, they would set up their little town to the nearest body of water. And knowing, typically rivers, knowing that the river was going to flow downward, downstream, that you were always mindful that even if you never saw them, that there was probably somebody living downstream from you, needing clean drinking water, needing clean water to cook. And so culturally, it became a, a spiritual practice to not defecate in water because of a functional, structural, scientific observation that we all have. If we need fresh water, we don't want nobody upstream from us pooping in the water so that we can have clean drinking water. And so that culturally, this was like the cultural relationship of human beings, even if they've never met. I don't remember the priest's name, but there was a priest who said something, an Ifa priest, who said something to the effect of, all spirituality in religion is the deification of culture. It's the deification of culture. Human beings come together, they establish rhythms in relationships with the earth. Okay, we put the seed in, we water the seed, we sing to the seeds because we out in the thing together. We like singing songs while we planting the seeds, and we singing songs while we pulling up the weeds. And this becomes now something that today, because we are detached from a relationship to our environment, something that we just repeat without the social context that gave rise to the spiritual practice. It was an organic relationship with the earth, rhythmically and cyclically, human beings coming together to do the same thing over and over again because it gave them the outcome. Food was the outcome. Fresh, clean water, even if a whole bunch of people lived near the water. We always had clean drinking water because it was a culturally responsible thing to not defecate in fresh water because somebody was going to need to be drinking that water. But now it becomes articulated in a biblical text that says the greatest sin that a person can commit is to defecate in fresh water. And I'm like, oh my God, is this why, like, these people are so diabolical? Is this why they put fresh water in our toilet bowls? Is to make us always the criminals? Like, I was subdued, child. I was hurt. My feelings were hurt when I heard that. The other thing that I heard about the same
Oh,
deity, because Oshun is the governess of fresh water, that the greatest sin that you can commit is to defecate in fresh water, and that the thing that Oshun hates more than anything, the goddess of fresh water, is she's the goddess of fresh water, but she's still Mother Earth. Is that all of the female deities are most offended, but especially Oshun, by people who litter. by people who litter. And do you know, from the day I heard that, which was in 2016, to this day, I have a bad habit of carrying bags with me and just picking up random pieces of
Oh,
garbage off the road. It's hard to do here in LA because it's filthy, but it became a practice of mine. And so
yeah.
it's so interesting because this is the last thing I'm gonna say about this. If the if all spirituality and religions are the deification of culture, then what is the current culture that we live in that we have deified? It's a murder cult that we live in. It is a death cult that we live in. That's why medicine causes death. That's why
Yeah.
schools cause death and despair. The preschool to prison pipeline. Everything created in this culture that began as a murder cult. Am I being dramatic? No, I'm not being dramatic. He literally tells you in your face, I had to commit ritual, C side, S side, in order for you to have life everlasting only after you die. Your death is a requirement to get the gifts, to get the promises, to get the life quality. Not only is it a death cult, it is a cult that thrives in suffering. What does it mean to be Christ-like? What does the Bible say? It is only when you are able to take up your cross like I, to suffer for humanity like I have suffered. Suffering is a requirement for the gifts of the afterlife. What's the afterlife? You have to die before you can meet the person offering you these promises. You want to get to know me? You just have to believe and trust that when you die, I'm going to be there waiting for you. It is the most sinister thing that has happened to human beings, that we begin to delight in our suffering. We begin to wear our suffering like badges of honor because we know the more that we suffer, the closer to the Lord we gonna be. The more lack we experience, the more trauma we experience. So you will hear people talk about their trauma literally like their armor. Like, I sure did persevere through that time. I sure did survive through that time. And only with the strength of the Lord did I survive and persevere and all this shit. And people be like, that sure is wonderful. That's nice. That's so wonderful. She did that. Jesus did that for you. I went to church with my mother when she was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago. And I had not been in the church in a very long time, but I knew it was going to give my mom some comfort. You feel me? For this diagnosis she just got. By the time she was diagnosed, she was late stage 4 breast cancer. And so we go to church. And listen, the mother exists everywhere. She is everywhere. So I ain't have no problem going to church. I'm not a Christian. Will never be a Christian. But I was like, well, the mother must have something for me here today. So let me take my book and my pen and take some notes for when she cracked me over the skull, because it's inevitable. And baby, did she crack me over the skull that day in that church. Before the preacher even started preaching, there's a period after the choir sang where people can get up and testify to what the Lord has done for them. It's called the testimonials, right? And I just want to testify what the Lord has done in my life, right? This was a relatively small church. There might have been maybe 100 to 150 people in this church. For churches in the South, it's a relatively small church. Everybody that got up, I was sitting there, child, my mouth agape. I was like, oh my God. In a church this small, there had to be 15 people that got up to go offer their testimony, and every single one. My mother didn't even get up. So just the ones that got up to give their testimony, every single one of their testimonies was how they quote, how Jesus helped them beat cancer. I said, oh my God. Child, I was like, I said, ain't nobody asking the question why this many people, why almost 10% of the whole congregation, at least those who have spoken up, have had cancer? That ain't the question on anybody. Y'all all such super good Christians, and Jesus is rallying on y'all behalf to beat cancer. Why he give y'all cancer in the first place then? Like, why you
Mm.
got cancer in the? Is nobody gonna ask that question? Well, why did Jesus see fit to give you cancer in the first place if he gonna help you heal it all after the fact? One man got up, girl. Oh my God. This man told a story so horrifying. He said that he had just complete that he was in remission from his third battle with cancer. He had had prostate cancer, he had had lung cancer, and he had a brain tumor. This man was my mother's age. My mama is 60, 67. So he was young. He wasn't even an old man. And I have just gotten the clearing that I am in full remission from my third battle with cancer in a church that small. This is a death cult. And I'm telling you, it's deep because we're talking about words, water, and trees and such, and casting a spell on the planet. What does the Bible
Mm.
say about that? That when Moses was telling Pharaoh, "Let my people go, let my people go," and Pharaoh was like, "I ain't letting nobody go, whatever, whatever." And the last punishment, the last plague, was that the angel of death came from out of the sky and swept through like a massive cloud and killed all the firstborn of Egypt. Remember that? And I saw the Charlton Heston version, right? When Charlton Heston was Moses, and that I'll never forget that shit because I might have been 4 or 5 years old when that movie came out. And the sky opens up and it was so creepy, and this literal cloud came out of the sky and like shh, in every direction over the kingdom, and all you hear is women screaming because their babies are dying all over the kingdom. This is the world we live in. This water that we're breathing, this atmosphere that has been created by the despair and cries of women crying for their children, crying for their husbands, their sons. And the evidence of that shit is when you go to church, we don't think about it because the songs are so beautiful. Gospel is so gorgeous, but we're literally singing songs, willing ourselves to death. I can't wait to meet my Jesus. What are you saying? Because the only way that you can meet Jesus is to die.
Yeah.
I'm not being
Mm.
metaphorical. I'm being deadly serious about the power of our words and what is created in the world.
You're being deadly serious.
Deadly serious. I can't wait. We sing songs like in the great by and by. What's the great by and by? Heaven. What is heaven? Is where you have been told that the great white Father God with the white beard and the white hair and the white robes and the white heaven and a white castle with gold, streets of gold and the land of milk and honey is somewhere that you have no evidence exists, but you can't wait to get there because it's been etched in your consciousness as something that is absolutely real, and the only way to get there is to die. You wish for death and do not know that every song that you sing, this power that comes out of your heart,
Mhm.
is creating a spell that wishes you closer and closer to your own death in slow motion. So the sickest people you ever meet are in a church. Everybody got high blood pressure.
Mm.
Everybody got
Oh my
diabetes.
gosh.
15 people in a church of 100 people can give their testimonies about overcoming several different types of cancer. You feel me? But your songs are
Mm.
saying, there was one song that they sang in the church that day. It was like, I give it all away. Girl, I sat there and wrote the lyrics to the song because I couldn't, I was like, oh my God. I give it all away. I give my life away. I give my life away, child. This is in the song. I give my everybody in there crying, raising their hands up to the heaven, just cry, believe this song, and are not even comprehending what they are saying. That the only friend I have is in Jesus, somebody I ain't never met. But meanwhile, your mama, you can whenever your rent late and you need a little extra help, you call your mama. You do not call Jesus. You say, "Mom, look, I'm gonna get you back. I promise. I'm gonna start paying you back this money I owe you, but I need some help with my rent." You feel me? Your mama feeds you every day for 25 years until she finally put you out her
Mm.
house. You feel me? And she will still buy you groceries once you leave. But the only friend you have is in Jesus. The only evidence. There was another song that says something to the effect of what
Oh
did it
dear.
say? The only one who has healed my wounds, the only one who can mend my broken heart, the only one who watches over me. Like you didn't have a mama for 20 years, who
Mm.
perpetually, damn near neurotically, kept her ever present watchful eye over you to make sure that you were safe in the world until you could guarantee that safety on your own. But the only friend you have is in Jesus. The only one who watches you. Oh, what it was another lyric? The only one who holds my hands when I am afraid. What? This I literally saw a mental image of me and my little sister on each side of our mama when our daddy left and she ain't have no car, walking down the highway with us to go and get us something to eat. And my mama, struggling with two little babies.
Mhm.
Where but the only person who hold your hand when you are afraid or when you are in the dark is Jesus. And we are literally willing ourselves sick with these monstrous stories that have been imprinted on our skull to manipulate us using our power to embolden our opposition, to embolden our adversary. So we have to now
Mm.
know and take that language and use the science and the spirit of the hidden life of trees and the biology of belief. And if we can only get 10% of the population to recite the global conspiracy to right all wrongs, bitch, we can set this shit off. Like we can do that, right? At least if you have Bruce Lipton tell it, right? What is it? The theory of the 99th monkey and or the 100th monkey or whatever language you want to use. We are a part of the mother's body. We have the ability to transform her health, to transform our experience on the planet, and we have to use what's been used against us. That's what we have to do. We have to take back
Mm.
power. The easiest thing that we can do is take back the power of our voice, take back the pranayama, take back the chi, the ashe, all of those words that we give to what we know is the inherent life-giving element of breath, right? Anyway,
Mm.
I
Thank
don't
you
know if
so
I even
much.
closely answered what you asked originally, but anyway.
Oh, it's no, I mean, I just love like um, because I spent 4 years building a permaculture property, so
Say that again.
fully like 4 years building up a permaculture property,
Oh, okay,
so
cool.
yeah, so totally like mycelium and trees and seeds and like that was my lesson that I needed to learn after being so disconnected behind a computer for 25 years, sound asleep, you know, you know, willing my life away for the dollar,
Yes.
and it was like boom, my back went. That was my wake up call. I need to move outside, never been outside, never touched the dirt in my life. That was
Oh,
the
wow.
reconnection to the mother, and now it was like the journey to then get out of the city, then connect to the mother even deeper. Near that, I was called to the ocean, and now I'm
Mm-hmm.
starting to feel like I want to reconnect back to the mother and get my hands back in the soil, but in community, because I did
Mm-hmm.
it alone, and we need to work in community. And then, as I said, find my people, connect, keep evolving, keep, and I always felt like there's a role here. There's a reason that I'm doing this, that I'm sharing, that I'm connecting with you, that I'm going to push this out. That
Mm-hmm.
um, just keep listening, keep listening, keep listening, keep
We have
listening,
to
keep
sing. We have to sing. We have to sing a
yeah,
lot. And I'm talking about we have to really sing. And the reason I thought about that was when you were talking about, because you had asked me earlier about putting your hands in the
yeah,
soil
yeah,
and how I'm
yeah,
really a huge proponent of particularly women doing that. Um, but also, one of the things, and I found the piece that I wanted to read to you from this book, but one of the things I loved about this book when she was talking about the cave drawings and the megaliths that showed pictures of women standing in a circle with their hands upraised and their heads back, and you could see the little wavy lines coming out of their mouth, like they're singing, right? And they got their hands raised and they're singing, and in the middle of them is a giant stone, like a giant stone. And so she was saying in the book that there are theories that the known science of using sound waves to
mm,
manipulate massive objects is one of the explanations used for the pyramids and for Stonehenge and for all these megaliths that they're trying to give aliens the credit for, that it was this science. And as a matter of fact, I just saw another thing last night about this temple in Indonesia, where they're saying that that sound waves were the way that this temple was actually built, that it wasn't just the sound waves in the temple that the temple was emanating, that it was actually constructed by people who had mastered the art of using sonic waves through singing to move massive stones that human beings could not carry alone. I said, oh my God, right? I was like, bitch, we need to be singing. Not only do we need to be singing, I have this other plot in my head, right? Because I'm reading all these stories about like the orca and the dolphins, and these scientists are always the bearers of terrible news, like, you know, the orcas and the dolphins are at the point of no return in the evolutionary process and all this bullshit or whatever. I'm like, I'm having this idea about like taking ceremonial music sung by, you know, people from all over the world saying exactly the same language, but in their indigenous language. So like if you speak English or you speak French or you speak, you know, patois from, you know, France, or I mean from Haiti, or whatever your language is, saying the same words in a song, but multiple languages like layered on top of each other, and then taking that shit in a in like waterproof like speakers, you know, the big waterproof speakers, and playing that shit like in the water. Because I'm so obsessed with the idea that whales can sing to each other from opposite sides of the planet. Like that shit always blew my mind. So much so that whales had been coming to me in my dreams a lot for like the last 2 months. And I thought about this movie that I saw as a kid, never seen it again. It was one of the Star Trek movies where they get this sound and nobody in the galaxy knows this sound. It's not a language that anybody has heard or knows how to speak. And it's the Star Trek crew that figures out that it is the language of an extincted species from the planet Earth that was in distress. It was the orca. It was, and they were like, damn, how are we gonna, because the only way to stop this cataclysm happening in our time is to get the language of the orca, that this spaceship, that's the only way the spaceship was communicating, is in this dead language between the orcas. So they had to go back in time to rescue a female and a male orca to be able to communicate with this ship that was threatening to destroy the whole galaxy. I said, oh my God. I went back and watched this shit 2 weeks ago. This episode of Star Trek about these whales. This
Oh,
is an ongoing
shit.
theme. So I don't watch movies for entertainment. I know that
No.
they are like our modern hieroglyphics, right?
Hmm.
And so there is also a Marvel movie. I can't remember which one, but this is the same thing.
Hmm.
These two Marvel characters, I can't remember the name of the movie, but the scene that I remember, as these two Marvel characters are told that they have to appease these two ancient elders in order to stop the end of the world. Something is happening on the world, and the only two ancient beings that can prevent the destruction of the planet is they have to go and talk to these ancient beings. And they were like, they are given all these riddles about what the ancient beings are and where they at. And so they get to this place and they're like, I don't see nothing. And then they saw like a little telephone in a little building on the beach. And they were like, what is this? And they pick up the telephone and they hear some people talking. And it's like, they say, oh, like, right? Whatever. And he was like, and so the telephone was an old school telephone. So there's a telephone cord that went outside the building, and they followed the telephone out where the line was, the power line was. And girl, it was two fucking killer whales that popped up from the surface of the ocean to talk to these goddamn, the ancients were the goddamn whales. I said, oh my God. I said, oh my God. What are y'all trying to say with these whales, y'all? Okay. So I'm like, we need to be talking to the whales. We need to be playing music to the whales. We need to be revisiting
That's a
these
cool
stories.
project.
Okay. We need to be revisiting these stories of the water
Mm.
deities. It is everywhere. I'm not a fan of Jason Momoa
Oh,
at all. But I rewatched that movie that he was in,
uh,
Aquaman. I just
yeah,
rewatched
oh, that was a
Aquaman
great
with,
movie. One of few I watched with my
like I
son.
said, I am not a huge Momoa fan. However, because I've been on this water kick with the whales and everything, and we have just for the first time in 12,000 years, we have all the outer signs and air and fire signs in a Pluto in Aquarius. And Aquarius is an air sign, but it is personified by the heavenly waters of the upper firmament. And so I'm like, okay, water is coming out huge in a rapidly moving period in human history. It's been 12,000 years since we have had our it's been 12,000 years since we've had two of our outer planets in air or fire air or fire signs. And since we've had all five outer signs in air or fire sign, since we've had all of our outer planets in air or fire signs, there's no astrologer, because they have computation scales that they can use to go back past the modern era, and they were like, it's never happened in known human history where all five outer planets were in air or fire signs at the same time, all in the same year. This all happened in the same year. And so when I'm talking about using these things, the manipulation of water, the science of trees and mycelia, and all of the science that we know that we can use now, the air and the fire of these outer planets will help expedite a process that up until this point has been long and slow and laborious, because all of our outer planets have been in earth or water signs. Everything has been tumultuous and slow moving and burdensome, and like, damn, when is this shit gonna be over already? Mm-hmm. That's why people are also experiencing crisis, because it's unfamiliar, the rapidity, the rapid nature of all of these massive occurrences. We have to be articulating something so radical and dynamic and new that it immediately resonates and it immediately takes off. We don't have to change the world. We have to give people the vision of what it means to change the world, and they will use what they have, where they are, and the skills that they have that are peculiar to them to set this shit off. It's not hero syndrome shit that we're talking about. We're talking about also open displays of opposition to the old. Open displays of opposition to the old. We cannot, this is not the period for us to be doing sacred ceremony in our goddamn house where can't nobody see. We have to be casting spells in public. We have to be on the street corner just like the crazy old man with the sign that says the end is nigh, Jesus is coming back. Like, I'm serious. Because people are looking for a solution that's not being offered in mass. People are looking for a language that's not being expressed outside, in the open, in the air, that is calling on us to change the material world by speaking anew into the world, right? And so I'm like, what are these whales trying to teach us right now? Because they ain't coming up into my life for no reason. These sparrows are not kicking my ass for no reason. What are the ancient stories that teach us something about these deities and how we can maximize off the potential that is generated right now? So I'm not a Jason Momoa fan. As a matter of fact, I don't like him. But because this was happening, and I don't like DC Comics either. So I'm a Marvel girl. So I was like, fuck DC Comics, fuck Aquaman or whatever. But I was like, you know what? Let me get myself out of my way. This movie has something to teach us. And so I went back recently and watched Aquaman, both 1 and 2. And there is some powerful magic happening in this movie. And it's not the overt stuff. It's not the wars and the fighting and it's the subtle shit that we always ignore because we're just watching the movie for entertainment. Like the scene where the so-called bad guy, isn't it interesting how the bad guy is always actually low-key the good guy? Anyway, so the bad guy, who is Jason Momoa's brother, who is the one who is supposed to be kind of like the rightful heir of the throne, because he's the one that's been down there with the people in the trenches. And remember, the people who have been keeping themselves secret in the lower firmament, they were keeping themselves secret for what? Because humans ain't shit. Humans ain't shit. That was their whole thing. It was humans ain't shit. They destroying their own terrain. Now they're trying to destroy our terrain. Look at all this garbage they left at the bottom of the ocean. There are about 1 million ships in the bottom of the ocean. They could perpetually destroy everything they put their hands on. Humans suck. That's the overall theme of the people living in the water. But you have been forced to believe that Jason Momoa, quote, the half-breed, he's got mixed loyalties. He's got mixed loyalties right? And he's the hero and not his brother who was like, no, I'm trying to protect us at all costs. He said, let me show you something. And with the first scene, I was like, oh my God. And this guy is the bad guy. When he churned the ocean, remember when they churned the ocean? And it was like, humans want to be out here with this bullshit? Fine, we gonna give y'all all y'all shit back. And he churned all the garbage in the ocean, all the waste in the ocean, all the ships, all the refuse that they have destroyed the ocean with, and it was like, here, take y'all shit back. And bloop, took the ocean and plopped all that garbage back on the earth. I said, that is such a radical scene that did not get anywhere near the attention or props or deep investigation that it should have. That everything on the planet, every creature is in an act of rebellion. When we're seeing all these stories about these animals turning on humans, everything on earth is rebelling against the sun gone rogue. We say humans, but not all humans are these malignant. It is this shit that has been bred in us, this malignancy that is in hostile opposition to the mother. What is the mother? Everything on the earth. Yin is everything on the earth. It's trees is yin. Fire is actually yin. Fire is yin. Trees is yin. Water is yin. Earth is yin. Sand is yin. Metal is yin. And it is the destructive nature of the sun, separate from himself, cut away from himself. And there's an old saying. It was in that movie, The Black Panther too, but it's an old saying actually that says, the child abandoned, the child neglected by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. This is a classic personification of one who does not see himself as one with the whole, destroying the whole in his madness, destroying the whole in his madness, destroying himself in his madness. So anyway, this is fun. I like this. I like interviews. I like interview setup shit. I like it. I like it. It doesn't
It's
happen
so
often,
cool.
but it's
Oh,
dope. It's fun.
it is cool, right? Because it's like it just yeah.
I'm coming.
It just
I'm
it just
coming to New
takes
Zealand, and I'm
it just
just.
takes this flow, like you can't, especially with a woman like you know, you're just so, and that's what made the reading of the book, because you know, you would have your little rants, but you had to have your little rants, you know, and because that's because someone like me who's like, oh, it was that actually helped me pull it back in, you
Yeah.
know,
And you know,
and
our
so it
generation, we have
was
a
awesome.
tendency to be a little bit ADD anyway. Like we need the Cliff's notes. Sometimes we need the Cliff's notes to really make shit stick. Like, oh, okay, now see what she's talking about. Yeah, yeah. Because at first I was like,
Anyway,
yeah,
I'm gonna let you. I think you have like. I think that you've you're so hot, and I'm just looking at me and like my blanket.
oh,
I'm gonna let you go and
no, I'm fine.
cool
But yeah,
yourself.
if you need to
So
go, that's
cool.
fine. There was one. Can I read a little thing to you in closing from this
Yeah,
book?
sure.
Yeah, you said
Yeah,
yes. Okay.
yeah.
Um. Yeah, 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 yeah. Is this it? I thought this was it. Oh yeah, this is it. Oh wait. There's so much. This was one section, but this wasn't the one I was looking for. It says if women, if it is women, let's see, if it is not to be too late. This might be the best one to read. Although there was another one that was better. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the whole section of the machine people should be going back and revisiting anyway.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I might have to pull out my little glasses too, child. My eyesight and this California smog is getting more and more intense. Blah, 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 blah. Let me put those on right now. Oh yes, eyes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the whole chapter on the machine is so currently relevant. It's actually kind of creepy. It's actually kind
Mm.
of like concern. It's like I have this theory that sometimes, eh, that maybe they have actually gone back and read shit to actually enact it to like make it happen. You know what I'm saying? Because some of the stuff that she wrote in here is so
Hmm.
currently relevant. It's like was somebody reading her book to like create a
Exactly.
strategy for the new world, like something diabolical. You know what I mean? Because it's like she
Mm.
had a crystal ball. That's what it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Magic flight home. Please spell the world. Here it is. Okay. So for your followers, if they were wanting to go back and listen to this or read this themselves, I won't read both of them, but the first one that I think is important to read is page 377, which is in the section called The Machine. And it's the second paragraph down, and it starts out: if it is not to be too late for us all women on a global scale have to regain our ancient ontological power. That's how that starts, right? And then down below that, keep reading, and it says, all women may be highly sheltered. Let's see. All women, and maybe the highly sheltered average American white woman most of all, must begin the daily practice of wrestling with these twin twined serpents. For that is how the ontological muscles are developed. That is how the sexual and spiritual powers are intertwined. That is how females regain evolutionary memory and the habit of being cosmic women once again, i.e., that is how God re-becomes female. I said, oh. And then the second thing, you can keep going because that whole little maybe 2 or 3 paragraph section is really great. But this is what I was talking about from the beginning. Mm-hmm. Because women's spirituality in the Western world has been, or has often seemed to be, a cultural luxury of mostly white middle class women, it too has been accused quite justly of lacking a political consciousness. Political consciousness is the material world. Okay, so it
Mm.
says because it's been lacking a spiritual consciousness, or at least a lacking of political reference. On another level, many lesbian and even hetero feminists who are, quote, into the goddess have opted for cultural political separatism. They have, quote, left politics and political solutions. That is, by blaming the world's problems on men and then refusing to have anything to do with the man's world, i.e., let him clean up his own mess. The glaring problem with this separatist solution is that the man's world is still filled with a majority population of women and children. It is women and children doing most of the suffering out there, and to turn one's back on the man's world is to turn one's back on them. A genuine understanding of the goddess would not allow us to do this. A true ontological experience of the goddess and of the complete physical as well as spiritual bonding together of all life on earth would not allow us to turn our backs on the man's world, for we are in and of that world. And its suffering is an extension of us as we are an extension of it. It is in a true reliving of the earth's first religion, we can make no distinction between the life of the spirit and the life of the flesh. Listen, we can make no distinction between the life of the spirit and the life of the flesh, for they are one. And so we can make no separation between between spirituality and politics. We are this world. We cannot leave it. We can only work to transform it as we transform ourselves in acts of evolution and revolution. The genius of Michael Foucault surely was that he showed us so clearly and so precisely how politics is everything that happens to the flesh. Politics is everything that happens to the flesh. On earth, mind and spirit are definitively embodied. The notion that mind and spirit can be abstracted from the body is a patriarchal lie, and a continuance of this lie is the notion that we can indulge in spirituality that is above politics, that somehow floats above the agony of this present earth like a little blissed out cloud. The spirit is within a body. It is the conscious experience of of process within that body. And the spirit evolves or is obstructed in its evolution, depending upon the body's experience of its material environment. It is patriarchy that devalues and disconnects the body from spirit in order to make the body's energy accessible for exploitation. A feminist spirituality must begin with the fact of being alive in a biological body on a living and conscious biological planet. This is the human ontological condition. This is the condition of all human evolution and all creative human activity. Those who embrace spirituality as an escape from politics, as a transcendence of political exigencies, simply do not understand what feminist spirituality means at its roots: the joining of conscious body and conscious spirit in an ongoing epiphany of experienced evolution. Oof, of experienced evolution. Whatever represses or deforms the body's experience of itself also represses and deforms the spirit's self-experience, i.e., God does not want millions of human beings to starve and suffer and die so that a select few can undergo a spiritual experience. Nor does the goddess live solely in elite separatist retreats, dancing naked in the piney woods under a white and well-fed moon. The goddess at this moment is starving to death in refugee camps, with a skeletal child clutched to her dry nipples. The goddess at this moment is undergoing routine strip and squat searches inside American prisons. The goddess is on welfare, raising her children in a ghetto next to a freeway interchange that fills their blood cells and neurons with lead. The goddess is an 8-year-old girl being used for special sexual thrills of visiting businessmen in a Brazilian brothel. The goddess is patrolling with a rifle slung over her shoulder, trying to save a revolution in Nicaragua. The goddess is Winnie Mandela in South Africa saying, "Don't push me," i.e., the goddess is the world. The goddess is in the world, and nobody can escape the world. We know this, but we still forget it. Probably the most
Well,
powerful line she wrote in this whole book.
I remember that. That was definitely, yeah, I that was definitely a significant part. I remember that. I remember that bit.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, it
I
was
believe
really
that's in the chapter of
powerful.
the machine, but also the Magic Flight
Mm,
Home is really great. But the machine is one, if people are
mm.
really wanting to dig
Oh,
into it, women
yeah,
as robots.
and the beginning, just to actually understand what we are.
Yes, yes, yes.
So powerful.
I mean, even the first, what is
So
it, the
powerful.
first chapter in the beginning, we are all female, baby.
Oh,
That's a problem for a lot of people. A
I
lot of people
know.
got a problem with that. A lot of people got a problem. But listen, science
Yeah,
will save your life every
yeah,
time.
yeah, absolutely.
Every time.
Thank you so
This
much.
was fun.
Ah, it's like we got a new best friend. It's
Oh,
so cool, right?
well, listen, don't
It's
put it out there if you don't
so
intend for me to come sleep on your
cool.
couch because I'm coming to New
Ha
Zealand.
ha ha ha. Do you know how many beds there are in this house? Like I bought a batch and it's just like there's a bed right here, there's two more here. There was actually another two here.
Uh,
There's like one more there and it's just like it's a little holiday batch, and I
listen,
was just
it's
like,
so high on my list of things to do, child. Like I gotta go to New Zealand before my 50th is up. Before my 50-year rotation is up.
"Woo,
Yeah, I gotta go.
I'll go
And
pick
it's
you
so
up."
interesting because it's been coming up so often. I've met 3 people here over the last maybe 4 months from New Zealand. I was like, okay, I gotta go to New Zealand. Yeah, yeah. So this was fun.
Pretty
I appreciate it.
special. All right. Go and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Oh,
Oh,
let me put out
yeah,
my
thank you.
contact information for your listeners.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I do divinations and 5 elements wellness consultations. So if you want information about that process, how to book a wellness consultation or a divination, You can email me at evoemetemp@gmail.com. My name is Cassandra Faye Floyd, also known as the Daughter of the Fates. Daughter of the Fates is also how you can find me on TikTok, on YouTube, and on IG. On my IG, it's an underscore between each word. Daughter underscore of the Fates underscore between each word. And also, I have another IG that is release.heart.center. And then the primary outreach platform that we've been using as the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence is my YouTube channel, which is @Daughter of the Fates, FATES. So those are the ways that you can get in contact if you want to make contributions, donations. Oh, one more thing. If you want to support the work of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence in other ways, then I also have Daughter of the Fates Etsy store where you can buy goddess-centered jewelry, customized goddess-centered jewelry, and wares. That is Daughter of the Fates, FATES, daughterofthefates.etsy.com. Okay, that's
Excellent.
everything.
And if you want to find the Great Cosmic Mother, I honestly just searched Great Cosmic Mother. I was probably searching for audio because I didn't. I was like, how am I going to read it? And
Yeah.
you pretty much came up. Or if you want to find Cassandra, of course, just put the Great Cosmic Mother Cassandra.
Oh
and
wow. Okay, cool. I haven't even searched it that way, so that's awesome. So yeah, I've
and
actually
it's
been.
great. And you can see all the chapters, and you've got photo, and the photos for each chapter is the artwork in the book, right?
Yes,
That
yeah,
Monica's
yeah. I made
done.
sure to get
So
so
that
you can go to Monica Zhu actually has a website because her artwork still tours all over Europe. So that's where I got the artwork from to use the thumbnails, was just her pieces that are on display
nice,
throughout
nice.
museums in Europe.
Yeah,
Her website,
so
it's just
cool.
Monica Zhu. I think it's monicazhu.net or not monicazhu.com. Her artwork, if
Yeah.
you have the opportunity to go see them live, her artwork is amazing. So yeah,
All
used for all
right.
the thumbnails. Yep.
So cool. Thank
All
you so
right.
much.
We should do this
Over
again.
and out from Curious Bee.